All right, Joshua L. Harris, welcome back. I didn't, before I even let you speak, I didn't expect to have you back so soon, but I really wanted somebody to talk from the right-leaning perspective on things, but there's so much Disney stuff going on, and I'm like, you're the perfect guy to have on. So welcome to Josh Completely Unfiltered, because I told him right before we started, just whatever you want to say today, because there's so much I want to talk about. So Josh, have at it. Welcome back.
Hi there, guys. Pleasure to be back. Thank you, Royce. If you're looking for somebody right-leaning, I could find somebody or completely right. I could find somebody for you, but that's not going to be me. I'm not. I wouldn't consider centrist, but I'm a profoundly nonconformist, conservative, creative individual, which basically makes me a unicorn. I do have several values that are arbitrarily placed on the left. That make me unpopular with my conservative friends, and vice versa. But yeah, still, we'll go ahead and I'll play right for a little while, so that'll be fun.
No, please don't. But we used to just call that moderate. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly. Yeah.
I don't actually, and I said all that just to say it because the idea of you had just in previous shows brought up political topics, and we've tried to stray away. But I've had Joe Walsh and Rick Wilson on. And I just, in the effort of having all conversation, I'm just welcome to it. I welcome it, I should say. So that's the only reason I start off with that, because truly there's so much Disney stuff to talk about, with you. And just before we started, again, more news. The virtual queues are gone, which to me, for Tiana's Bayou Adventure and Cosmic Rewind are going to be gone.
I was wrong about that.
Is that? But isn't that just to sell more lightning lanes at this point? Because those lines, and by the way, you have how many things are going to be shut down at once? So of course you're going to need people to wait in line now.
Yeah. I suppose so. That was one of my predictions that I was wrong about, and I would be fully aware of admitting that. But I was looking at it from this is going to be me kind of backtracking, but still, I was looking at it from more of a guest service perspective, because you look at something like Cosmic Rewind, there's no exterior queue. This is going to be hellish for people waiting in the side of that line during the summer, or even just during the early spring. It's going to start getting hot and everything, and they don't have anything for people. So you're going to see all these ugly umbrellas in front of it and whatever.
So the umbrellas have been there from day one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was thinking about it more from a logistical concern rather than the super greedy angle that they're probably going with.
Now, all you do is complain about Disney, according to some people on Twitter. I don't feel that way. I just wanted to set it up that way. I got to tell you, I don't think that the problem is the people doing the complaining anymore. I think Disney's become its own obstacle to the extent that it's losing its most passionate supporters. And I think it's hard not to complain when they do what they've done. They just put out, first of all, I don't know if you read the Wall Street Journal article, but it was good. It was nothing new. We know all this stuff already, but it was a good read. But then Disney puts out a statement that they're concerned about rising prices, as if they have no control over it. And as if that wasn't absurd enough. 2 days later, they raised the price of Lightning Lane again?
Yeah, which only reinforces it. I did read that. I was busy with some client work, so I really couldn't have interacted with it at the time. But yeah, it's I'm like, welcome to the party, pal. And the fact that they said, oh yeah, we're concerned about it. I'm like, yeah, you should be concerned about it, because you're actually reaching that mythical ceiling that people have been warning about for the last 20 years or so. And when we talk about things like, just quickly address the point about my negativity, or alleged negativity with this.
Do you blame DEI?
Actually, this is one of the things you can't blame DEI on at all. I mean, well, you can blame certain decisions, but not the negativity.
Okay.
When I was when I was working for the company, one of the things that people loved to do in the backstage areas and everything, and sometimes on quiet moments where there wasn't any guest around. I knew what people were doing every single time that they were doing it, but I just allowed it to go there, and I just played dumb. Is that they said, "Oh, say, Joshua, what do you think about so and so about the company? What do you think about this?" And then I would rant and rave and everything for a good 5 to 10 minutes or however time is allowed and everything. And I tried to be as entertaining and as lighthearted about it as possible. I'm just like, "Oh, great, we're all gonna die because this is so stupid, and let me tell you how stupid it is, but I'm going to put a smile on my face while I'm saying it so that it makes sure that, softens the blow and everyone's still entertained." And then, like occasionally it would come up, I'm just like, well, look, okay, and it's still to this day, even though I'm not with the company anymore, I'm a Disney patriot. That's what I look at it as. I'm like, hell yes, I am going to ruthlessly attack you on every stupid decision that you make because I care about it.
Yeah.
Because I care so passionately about this. If I don't say anything about it, the people that are, the super nice ones, some of the people who got, the blue name tags, and some of which definitely don't deserve it and everything. Yeah, you don't give a care about the company. You really don't. You just care about your own image and you care about your own standing. But you don't really care what happens one way or another. Just as long as you're getting paid, right? You don't care that the entire organization is going to collapse in 10 years because of this ridiculous decision. No, you just care about getting paid. So when you have people that, want to bury their heads in the sand or only speak about things in a positive direction, that's one issue. Also, there's the whole entire issue that you have on X, which is something that permeates all of social media, is that, we are a negatively charged species. We're actually a negatively charged life forms are all negatively charged, especially those of higher intelligence like humans, like dolphins, that sort of thing, where we do it out of survival. We don't go around just like, oh, look, everything's 98% perfect. Okay, great, we're good and everything. Not the 2% over there. Look, you've got to worry about the snake in the grass that's over there. You've got to look out for the tiger that's in the distance that hasn't reached you yet, but will attack you unless you address it right now. That permeates its way all the way down society now. So when you're doing that, you're actually just like, you're trying to weed out cancerous cells and viruses in our society and everything. That's what you're doing. So of course, the negative posts are going to receive the most traction. But I'm one of the people that, like, I've always been extraordinarily positive with my portrayals of Disney's past, especially the appreciation of it. I mean, one need only look on my 2 websites for 5 seconds to understand the enormous amount of reverence that I have for this brand.
Well, you don't need to defend that, and I don't want you to defend that, because it takes 3 seconds to understand that your criticism is constructive, right? And it's obvious there's a lot of people that stand on the sidelines and have a lot to say. And oftentimes in the world of Twitter, it's all fake outrage. I mean, the amount of people that are still complaining about Splash Mountain just so they can get paid for clicks. It's absurd. But anybody who pays attention can tell that you're passionate and that you care about the Walt Disney Company.
Correct. Yeah.
By the way, how jarring is it when you see Disney come up in front of a trailer now? I think it was the Snow White one. It was like, Disney. I'm like, wait, where's what Walt Disney picked? Like, it was just Disney.
Yeah, I think that happened, I want to say around like 2012-ish, where they got rid of the Walt part. And it just became Disney. And they also, I didn't like it from a nomenclature perspective, because that's when they started dropping the S's. So
don't even get me started on that. What a waste of money. How stupid was that?
Yeah, well, it also doesn't make any grammatical sense.
It's also inconsistent.
Doesn't make any legal sense. Yeah, because it's just like, okay, they even, on certain documents and everything else, I mean, it's Disney California Adventure now. It's not Disney California Adventure.
That was not on my notes at all. I have all these notes, but I'm obsessed with the S. So now we have to talk about this.
Yeah. Well, okay. Here's the thing, though. I will give you a little bit of history before you continue with it.
Please.
The reason why that there is an S there, period, is for legal purposes, because and this started back in 1937. So it was Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. You can't copyright a Grimm's fairy tale. It's a public domain thing, but you can copyright Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's just like, I'm probably going to screw up the title here. It's like Errol Flynn's Robin Hood that came out like a year before that. That was another one that's a non-Disney related one. But the reason why you put the possessive Disney on there is so that you can claim that this particular version of this story is Disney's. Like you can't have like no one else can make a Cinderella movie with Jacques and Gus in it.
Right.
No, only Disney can do that. And it's not just a legalistic thing. It's also, you're trying to protect your version of the story, your version of whatever it is that you're trying to do. And also let the public know that this is something that has been approved by the same organization that has been in existence for now 101 years.
It's like a stamp of approval.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
But it goes back to Disney's America and the controversy surrounding that, because there was a lot of pushback there, not just over the idea of them actually building it right outside of DC, but actually back then, the big pushback that I recall was the idea of Disney's America, the idea that Disney was going to create their sanitized version of America, put it in a theme park right outside of DC, and sell their version of our history. And people did not like that. But I think of that, Disney's America, Disney's California Adventure. Mm-hmm. So I think of sort of that idea of like
there because it's Disney's California Adventure. The important, the operative word is it's their adventure. So it's their telling of the California story as an adventure,
as opposed to what? Give me the other version.
Well, then you would just drop the adventure part. Then it would just be Disney's California. So that would be just as kind of disgusting from an external standpoint as saying Disney's America.
Well, no, that I get. I thought you were going to just parse out the way you said it differently. In other words, to me, I hear it almost like Disney's Californian Adventure.
Correct. Yes.
That's really what they're saying.
Exactly,
but it doesn't make sense thematically because you're in California and you can have an actual Californian adventure. So in many ways, it's got kind of the same issues that Disney's America has, being right outside of DC. But all that to say, it's the Disney rubber stamp of this is ours now.
Right.
And then Bob Iger decides... I'm sorry, say it again?
And then they decide to take off the possessive S, and then they become Disney, which I think is mostly like... Well, I think it was... They're looking... Bob doesn't understand that he has the greatest company that's ever existed on the face of this planet. I mean, the only other organization, and you might have some differences on this, but I think that if you look at the art and if you look up the history and the culture and everything, the other far more important, but first one, and Disney is the second runner-up, is basically the Catholic Church for the last 2,000 years. It's just like, if you look at their art, if you look at the way that their influence has been over society and everything, good or bad, but mostly in a good span for the last 2,000 years. And then you have Disney. Disney is the greatest secular, semi-secular organization / institution that has ever existed. But Bob Iger has no regard for that, and I have a couple of theories, and they are really just theories about where his psyche is on that one. But
well, you're not going to get to say them because I'm ending the podcast with the phrase "Bob Iger doesn't know," and that's just going to be the end of it. Because I really, it kind of says it all.
Yeah, but I think that he was going for so he wanted to be like Nike or Apple. It's just like it wasn't. Why you don't say Apple's computers? You
Disney.
Don't say Nike's shoes.
But it's still Disney's Hollywood studio. That's my whole. That's my whole obsession. Is the inconsistent. And I think it was Was it really $1 billion to change the S?
It was not $1 billion for that I don't know of, but I do know that they changed the name of Hollywood Studios. It was $7 million in 2007. Just to change the name. But to
get rid of the S, it just never made sense to me to spend a bunch of money to get rid of the S in one location. And if your logic is to brand it Disney this, Disney that, because Disney's the moniker, then it would be Disney Hollywood Studios.
Right.
And there's I can't even think of them all right now. There's so many instances where the apostrophe S still exists. So I don't understand why he did that.
Well, it's just pick and choosing. There's no actual rhyme or reason sometimes with it. It's just I think that one of the big problems that we have in trying to analyze this company is that we tend to, and I do it myself, just like everyone else does, because it's part of like the conversational, our conversational discourse, is that we tend to over personalize this company. Where you say, it's just like, okay, well, Disney does this or Disney does that.
Right.
It's just like, well, no, this person over here and this thing,
Yes,
like
correct.
you'll say, it's just like for something like the Haunted Mansion, Madame Leota, she said,
Right.
I can say this. People will say, it's just like, oh, I can't believe that Disney would do this, or Imaginarium. Just like, no, Disney didn't do it. A very small subset of people in Imagineering, probably in Walt Disney Entertainment or merchandising, made a stupid decision on their own. Bob Iger doesn't do anything with it. The president of Disneyland probably has no input other than just saying, "Oh yeah, we need a shop here," and then he didn't have anything involved with the rest of the execution of it. So when you're looking,
I respectfully disagree. I think Bob Iger went to Lowe's on the weekend and dropped it off and said, "Here, guys, done."
Okay, well then I stand corrected on that one, but which we both say in jest, people. But yeah,
The fact that you have to
that's what we
clarify
did.
scares me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, it's the internet, and people just love taking things out of context all the time, which is the reason why I always put down on like my post and everything. I make sure to put down a satire warning. I have very
no fun that
strict
way.
stuff. Yeah, I know it's no fun that way, but still, just like I don't want people to know that I actually think this when I don't. But
Josh,
but yes,
Joshua, in all seriousness, there is some level of micromanaging to that degree from the top down. While it's not all over, and while Disney is not singular, and what you're describing obviously is spot on, but there is a certain level of micromanagement in the wrong areas, and I'm also equally fascinated by that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting the way that I think that sometimes it's interesting the way that they pick and choose certain battles, and they pick and choose certain areas that they want to address or not address. Where it's just there's and good God, when I was working with a company, like one of the real dreaded C word was not the one that you're thinking. It's consistency.
Courtesy?
No, not that one. Not that one. The 4-letter one. Not that C word. No, the real C word is
He's
consistency.
playing dumb and him going along with it. Go on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's always consistency, and people would talk about, well, consistency this, consistency that. I'm like, yeah, I get it that it's hard to achieve, but it's something that still is achievable, and you should definitely strive for it. But the fact that like their inconsistencies exist does not negate the purpose for you to continuously push towards consistency.
Yeah, but you're talking about accepting it, right? Like at a certain point,
Yeah.
It just becomes a thing. Well, I was having a conversation with somebody about this earlier. That's the way it is, and just because that's the way it is, doesn't. A lot of people buy into that notion. Walt Disney didn't buy into the notion of that's the way it is. Otherwise, we would have never gotten Disneyland.
Exactly, yeah. And there were so many things that he did. Like there's a whole subset of history. We take so many things for granted in society, and definitely with Disney, where like there was tons of times where people were telling him, very successful people who worked on several amusement parks and carnivals and everything, telling Disney, it's just like, for one thing, we look at it today, it's just like, when you think about a theme park, how many entrances does a theme park have? One, excluding Epcot. One. At entrance. Well, they told him that was ridiculous. It's just like, no, you have multiple entrances so that you can get people to go in from different angles and everything. You don't have them go through this one entrance.
But that's
with your
because
park.
they were making amusement parks.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. And he was making a theme park, and he wanted to tell a narrative, and you start this narrative on Main Street, USA, in that case, and you can say it with Hollywood Boulevard at the studios, blah 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 blah. So you're trying to set the tone for the rest of your experience there, and there are certain levels of genius that are associated with it that we just think is commonplace today, but really were quite innovative at the time. So.
Well, and that's look, I mean, you could do a whole thing on that because that goes beyond Disney, right? I mean, we've just lost appreciation for so many things that have become commonplace, but were once innovations. You know,
Exactly.
again, beyond Disney. Not to get on a tangent, but the idea of going into a store and shopping for yourself was an innovation. That's not how it used to be. I mean, Sam Walton comes along and changes the game. So being complacent and accepting things for the way they are is just what most people tend to do. And I guess, and I'm sure you understand this, that sometimes it just becomes so exhausting engaging with people like that I'm just like, I'm done. I don't even want to play in the sandbox right now. You don't get it. I don't feel the need to have to explain it to you. And it just becomes, you know, you'll do a whole thing on Twitter where you'll just block. You'll make an announcement and block people, and I get it because you're just like, I'm done with you. I don't even want to hear it anymore. Listen, when I was live in the parks, if you came in and man, we're just enjoying sitting on the people mover. If you just came in and were just too annoying, I'd get rid of you. I'm like, you're just messing up the vibe, man. You know?
Well, yeah, I think that you know, like there's a certain set of people which I think that I was part of them at one point. It's just like, oh no, you should just go ahead, you know, you should just be tolerant of everyone that's there, and you know, it's just like, you know, we can have all kinds of different opinions, we can have all kinds of different things that go on, and that's definitely true on a certain level, but and I'm going to paraphrase this badly, but the great intellectual Douglas K. Murray basically said, it's just like, okay, yeah, I can understand if you're a person like you Royce, who is telling me, it's just like, Joshua, you need to chill it in this way, or you're going a little bit overboard here. I'm just like, I understand that you're here for me, but if some guy off the street comes up to me with a T-shirt on that says JLH sucks, I don't really have any interest in what he has to say, ever.
Right.
And so you have to have a certain amount of discernment in and of yourself to be able to do that. And I really, you know, like for years, I hated the whole entire concept of blocking people. But I'm like, well, no, I mean, so you're never going to win over those people. It's not like you're just like, oh, but if I lose a follower, I'm like, who cares about that follower? I care about the other ones that I've already gotten. Besides, me blocking you probably helps me get 10 more followers, which has done so in the past. So it's something that, you know, I definitely don't like doing it. I can't, but it's something that's a necessary evil at some points, because you have to be able to protect yourself. And as I say, and as I've said before, it's just like, it's not blocking, it's audience curation.
I practiced, like, again, when I was doing the lives, same thing. I was my only moderator, and it was up to me to determine how to maintain that tone. And social media is content. So curation and editing is necessary. Most folks aren't looking at it from that perspective, I'm certain. But at the end of the day, you're curating an experience for those that choose to follow you.
Yeah, and the reason why that they don't do that, and the reason why they think that blocking is abhorrent, is because they're desperate for followers, but in that desperation, you make yourself profoundly unattractive.
See, I've been losing followers for weeks, if not months, right? Especially when I start to post clips of like something with Joe Walsh, you know, and I'll get a comment, it'll be like, no, thank you, unfollow. And I'm like, okay, bye. And number one, you didn't have to tell me. Number two, you didn't have to watch it. You don't have to watch every video, you know. Gary V, you know Gary is.
Scrolling by is an option, people.
But they don't. They want to hear the. For some people, complaining is the entertainment, you know.
Yeah.
But Gary V talks about how, like, look, you're here for me, and I'm giving you advice, and and coaching you and all that, but I'm also going to post other things that interest me. So if you want to see me, Gary V, going to a yard sale because I love yard sailing, I'm going to offer that up to you, right? And they're like little appetizers, right? They're little appetizers for everything else. And if you're not interested in it, then you'll move on and you'll just absorb what it is that I have to offer you that is of value. But I'm going to show you everything that interests me because it rounds out the edges. And I'm paraphrasing.
Right.
So that's kind of the way you got to look at it if you're actually going to sustain doing it. And I think you got to put your mental health over everything. So if blocking is what works for you, block.
Yeah, yeah, and really, like sometimes it is about the mental health, but I also, one of the things that you were saying, you just like, okay, I'm going to post things that interest me, and if they don't interest me, that don't interest somebody else, and that's fine. One of the examples of that, I know that you wanted to get slightly into politics or whatever, so we can go ahead and we can jump in a little bit. I'm a huge fan of Megyn Kelly for multiple reasons, but there are times when she gets off on her lawyer kick and she does her Kelly's court stuff. And I don't care at all about these court cases and everything else that she's transfixed by, but I get it because she used to be a lawyer and everything. I'm like, well, if I was like all of the people that I block on Twitter, I would come down hard on her and I would say, I'm just like, why are you focusing on this? You should be focusing on the issues that I want to talk about. And I'm like, no, I just don't watch the show for that day. And then I just move on to something else. And then I just come back in when she's talking about something that I'm interested in.
So I was talking to somebody about this the other day, too, and I don't even remember anymore. I've been doing so many podcasts. I haven't been live streaming. I've been hiding out, and I'm enjoying it because the people that want to listen will hear this, and I just enjoy the conversation I've been having lately with folks. Even like I was talking to Nick earlier, and we were getting combative. I've known Nick since the 3rd grade. We don't get combative when we talk normally. But in this format, we're exploring ideas, and I'm just all for it because I'm tired of everybody out there is yelling into their echo chamber, So all that to say, you're using Megyn Kelly as an example. I'll go even wider. Just think of TV viewing as a whole. If you turn on a channel and you're watching a show that you like, and then that show ends, and the next show comes on, and you don't like that show, do you shoot the television like Elvis? Or do you just change the channel and come back when a show you like is on?
Yeah. And also, like there's another aspect to this too. And this is something that I've been consciously doing for multiple years for some very specific reasons, which are a little bit complicated to get into right now. But I am very much, I've trained myself for mental resilience. I basically have trained myself for psychological warfare for the past like 5 or 6 years. Knowing that I would be in situations that I have right now. I mean, I say this with no amount of boasting, but I am the J.K. Rowling of Diz Twitter.
I don't even know how to interpret that.
Well, here's how you should interpret that. Okay, so why do you follow J.K. Rowling? Because you obviously love Harry Potter. I mean, like, yeah, you could say, okay, yeah, sure, I like her for this or that, and you can try to sound sophisticated, but really you're just there for Harry Potter. And the fact that she has been so vilified by the public for so long with that, and I'm not really a Harry Potter fan. I'm a huge J.K. Rowling fan. I mean, I really love her life story and everything else. I'm very much into creators. I'm like, I don't care about Star Wars. I love George Lucas. I don't really care about this or that movie. I really love Eisner. It's just like I'm more about the creative force that's into it, and in the same kind of vein, although not specifically that, I would not call myself the next Walt Disney, but I have contributed massive amounts of content and time and effort into preserving the legacy of this company and have been treated profoundly harshly ever since 2020 by the public. Not everyone, and I've grown a little bit so far as my channels are concerned. But the whole entire mental resilience thing is just like I was training for that for 2 or 3 years beforehand, and you have to get to a certain point where you can accept the fact that somebody is going to say something to you that you don't agree with, and that's okay. I'm 100% sure that you have certain viewpoints on certain issues that I would find repugnant.
Yeah,
but that's okay because I'm just like, well, that's just what you're saying, and I don't have to do the whole entire thing where a lot of people think, because we're in the culture wars and everything, I'm just like, but if I don't attack Royce right now, he will propagate out that to his followers, and then all hell will break loose for it. So I need to cut him down and cancel him right now. I'm like,
and
he's just as a
meanwhile,
thing.
meanwhile, I'm so like, while I, even if that opportunity presented itself, while I should be the guy that's pulling out those clips, it's not that I'm lazy. I'm just not interested in being one of those content creators. Right. So like, I can't bring myself to do it. I'd much rather go work on something that I deem more important, Yeah. And I just like, I've been editing this Jim Henson podcast episode for like 2 weeks, and it's only at the 45-minute mark, and I'm not even done, but it's comprehensive, mainly because I'm bringing in lots of found footage and using lots of interviews to kind of weave through what I'm saying. And I'm really trying to present his story and honor his story, and then kind of save my opining till the end kind of thing, And I just feel like I'd much rather spend my time doing that. And if 50 people watch that, then go make the clip of Josh not that he did this, but Josh attacking me on the show, or me attacking Josh, and then milking that for views, even though that's what you should be doing.
Yes. Yeah, if you're looking at it with the paradigm that we have right now, yeah, that's what you would do, and that would give you the clicks, and then the clicks eventually turn into revenue. But I really don't think that people on the outside, and really I would count myself as one of them, because I'm not a YouTuber. I don't typically do these type of shows. I don't even have my own. People have been begging me for years. I'm just like, no, I'd just rather do like guest spots on other people's shows and everything. I don't really have any interest in doing my own. But yeah, you need to do that, because then because one of the things that people don't understand about is that, okay, when they say, okay, do it for clicks, and I understand what you're saying, you're doing it as a shorthand parlance there, but most of the time, it's just like you have to get hundreds and hundreds of clicks to get like $1. So,
but not even that. I could be live right now. I could be streaming this whole thing live right now and making money, right? But the comments would be coming in. I wouldn't be focused on the conversation, and I wouldn't be creating what I actually want to create, which is a long-form conversation. I don't know. It drives me nuts, man. I'm very fortunate that I got where I got with whatever it is that I built over the last few years. I just can't be one of those people that just is like, I'm just too straightforward to a fault. So I can't be one of those people that A, I'm not going to let people ruin Disney for me. B, I'm not going to tell you that everything Disney does is perfection. And the last thing I'm going to do, is allow myself to be put in any situation where I feel as though I'm trading the love of it all for the commerce.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. I mean, I'm like with all of my endeavors and everything, I'm just like Walt Disney. I'm a horrible businessman, because I'm more based off of principle, and I'm more based off of like, okay, what is the right thing to do? What is the most important thing that I should be doing with? And you know what? I'm definitely not perfect with it. I know that I should definitely spend a lot less time on X and on social media feeds than I should be doing the important work that I do with like preservation and conservation of Disney's legacy. But it's just like there are certain times where it's just like, okay, what's a trade-off? Okay, if you don't speak up right now, especially with the things that are going on with like Rivers of America and everything, it's just like you're not really going to have much of a future with that, which is something that I fear constantly. I mean, I would love to, because I have like people that are Imagineering legends and everything that are my friends. I'm not bragging, but they said that it's just like one of them in particular said it's just like, no, I'm permanently in Disney's past now. I spend my entire time focused on chronicling their past. I cannot care about the future anymore. And as somebody who is in his 60s or his 50s, no, he's in his 60s. I'm like, I can understand that. That's fine. This is a battle for younger men, which are probably younger than me too. But still, it's a battle for younger men. I get
those younger men aren't there for the battle.
Correct. Yeah, there's that too. And my big concern is just like, okay, if we don't defend these type of things right now, then I become like the historian, and I'm not meaning to pick on him, but just as an example, I'm like, then I become nothing more than a Bill Cotter. And Bill Cotter is the world's preeminent historian and archivist on all things involving the 1964-65 World's Fair.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about Bill Carter for a second.
No.
But that's also applicable. Bill Carter would also be applicable. Mm-hmm. The author?
Yes, yeah.
Because in TV, he was the same thing. So let's talk about Rivers for a minute. Mm-hmm. I very much appreciate what you're doing on Twitter. I think actually the reason you and I started chatting was over that topic. You know, I've posted some things on TikTok at some point, and I just feel like none of that's the place to be taking the fight at this point. Mm-hmm. And I get that people should still be submitting letters. Okay. I just feel like at this point it's that the only fight left, and you tapped into this earlier on Twitter, is the state. You know, mm-hmm. because I firmly believe that there is going to be massive economic impact in the long term to Disney World and subsequently tourism in the area. Now, you could say Epic Universe is there and this and all that, but right now the Magic Kingdom is the preeminent theme park in the world. And if you're going to gut the heart of it, okay, and just reduce it down to every other theme park in Orlando, then you are going to flatten the business as a whole. Right. The whole entire market's going to flatten.
Right. So just to begin on that too, because there's so many places that you can go with, because this is an enormously complex issue that I've given a lot of thought about. To slightly address, because I find it very grating, the whole entire Epic Universe thing. Mm-hmm. You know, when the fact that it's allowed in the discourse at all, I find disgusting. Because first of all, you can look at it from an economic perspective. Epic Universe, let's say, I'm going to just pick a number out of the hat here. So Magic Kingdom has roughly about 18 to 19 million people, hovers around that area for a yearly attendance. Epic Universe is probably going to make somewhere around, I guess, around 10 to 12 in its first year. And that's all that it's ever going to get, really. For the rest of its entire existence, it's only going to get that 12 million. The only thing that will happen with this is that if Rivers goes down, then that means that Magic Kingdom's numbers go down from 18, 19 million to whatever. You know,
and then that ripples out.
15 million, whatever that you want to go with it, or 10. And then as a consequence of that, the other younger parks, Epcot, the Studios, and Animal Kingdom, they will get progressively lower than that too. But it's not as if because most people tend to think, and they don't think about it in like a monetary term, but they seriously think, okay, well, Magic Kingdom this year, you know, or last year, you know, before Epic Universe opens, gets 19 million people per year, and then Epic Universe is opening, and Epic Universe is going to crush Disney. They're going to destroy Disney. Yeah, and screw them. And then they're going to Epic Universe is going to get 19 million, and Disney's going to be left with 10. I'm like, that's not going to be the way that this is going to pan out. Even in your most rose-colored glasses about this park that you know absolutely nothing about, but meanwhile are able to go to the bat for every single second of the day in a completely transparent attempt to go ahead and make your old girlfriend jealous with your new girlfriend, it's never going to happen. And really the thing that I find most disgusting about this whole entire conversation about the Disney versus Epic Universe thing, and I've said it time and time again, Walt Disney Imagineering and Universal Creative are not in competition.
Yeah, but people don't understand that.
They don't understand. Yeah, they don't understand that because they're just like, okay, well, yeah, but they're going to say, look, if you don't pick up a tennis racket, and the other person is, then you don't have a tennis game.
Right.
This is how this works. And the reason why that is because now there is definitely zero brand loyalty. So, you know, it's just like if Disney fails, I've had people that were executives inside of Walt Disney Imagineering where I did this thing. I did the thing that everyone is doing right now. I did this 10 years ago. When Harry Potter was coming on to the scene, or was already there, I guess, I'm just like, well, what do you, I would ask my executive friends, just like, well, what do you think about this? Just like they're doing that over there. What you going to do for us over here? And they're like, oh no, it's just job security for me. If Disney goes down, then I'll just switch over to Universal. That's one aspect of it. The other thing that I don't like as the whole entire competition thing is that this is not Pepsi versus Coke. Okay, this is to me, and I think that this is true on a cosmic level too. So this is not just my perspective. Their response to this right now is as if, we're back in 2019 and you have Notre Dame, which is engulfed in flames, and one of the greatest cultural achievements, a UNESCO site, is being destroyed and being burned almost to the ground. And you have somebody that would be on, like one of the national broadcasters would say, oh, well, there's plenty of other cathedrals in Europe. We'll be fine without this. We'll be fine without it. It's okay. I'm like, no, if Disney falls, this is a catastrophic thing. This is a crime against the humanities. If Disney falls.
Well, I think the real issue is Disney is there's something going on with the company post-pandemic where they really are almost going out of their way to alienate their base audience. And I don't know if that's because in a desire to quote unquote compete with Universal or the larger market as a whole, if it's that desire to just sort of abandon the purists so that they can focus on more rides, quicker lines, and kind of make the factory thing a reality, get you through the park, right? How many rides did you go on today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that some of it is definitely related to that. I think that the reason why they primarily do, look, it's like this, okay? So you have this is a classic example that permeates throughout all of Hollywood. Okay, so you have this is an example. So you have the great actor Kirk Douglas,
Spartacus.
Amazing actor Kirk Douglas. Now this did not happen in real life, but I'm just making an illustration. Okay, so Michael Douglas comes out and he's not that good of an actor. No, he is really in real life, but let's just pretend he's not.
Okay, I hesitated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, he's a great actor.
Falling Down's a fantastic film.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy, but but let's say that he's not that good, and let's say that he doesn't have a natural ability to act and everything, and everyone's always comparing him, just like it's just like, well, that Michael, he's fine, but he's no Kirk. I tell you, he's no Kirk. Well, that's what the situation is for Disney right now. It's just like they've kicked out all of their own masters, and they're constantly, and to them very annoyingly, being compared to the greatness that was before. And it's just like, I just want to get rid of these completely miserable Walt Disney worshipers and get them the hell out of here so that we can do whatever we want to. We don't have to live up to any kind of standard. We don't have to have like a meta narrative. We don't have to speak to higher principles. No, we just make a freaking roller coaster. We put it out there, and then people do it, and then they give us money, and no one gives us any problems about it. And you know what we can do about that to accelerate the problem, accelerate this plan? Let's go ahead and let's rip out everything that they love intentionally, just so that we can sour them on the milk that is the Walt Disney Company, and that way we can survive without them. And that's their flaw. You cannot survive without them. And in one of the things that they're doing, and I had a conversation with a very well-connected person last night, someone that's far more connected than I am about it, and he reminded me of some things because I blocked them out in my memory. The people that Disney is chasing, the super elites, that they want to do, because really what they want to do is they still want to push for that Star Cruiser vibe, where they want to have a much smaller number of people inside the parks, but charge them an extraordinary
the
amount
DVC
to
market,
be there.
really.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about the DVC people. They're not stupid. These are the people that are your most diehard people. These are the people that are willing to spend a lot more money than anyone that's casually there. You know, they want the club. They want to go after the Club 33 in the DVC market. Well, those people are the people that are really passionate about it. You want to talk about Disney dorks? You know, it's just like it's not the people that are the middle income on it. The real big Disney dorks are the ones that have a lot of money and they spend time and they spend all tons of money to go ahead and have a lunch with a low-ranking Imagineer. They're the ones that do the books. They're the ones that know Marty Sklar's Mickey's 10 Commandments left and right,
But
front
that's
and backwards.
generational, and
Correct.
it's falling off.
Yes, it is falling off, and that was one of the things that I was on a show last week, and they were kind of like baffled by one of the survey questions that Disney has recently put
Oh, I
out.
was just about to bring that up.
Yeah, exactly. The whole entire thing about it is just like, are you expecting an inheritance? Is there somebody that's going to die in your family soon?
Imagine asking that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And people
You
are
wanna
just like, why are
size
you
you
asking
up.
that? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so, and then I had to explain to them, like, no, what the reason why they're doing that is because the people that are funding these massive trips to Disney World are your 60-plus-year-olds,
Correct.
your septuagenarians. Those are the people that are doing that. And the reason why that they're doing that is because they have such a strong emotional connection to the brand, and they want to spend quality time with their kids and their grandkids. And
But
this is a way to
that's
get
the
both of that.
generational component that they're discounting, because now what happens is you have these older folks funding these family trips, okay? And when those folks pass away, all right, their kids and their kids' kids aren't going to go back to Disney because they're going to either be priced out, but the memories will have dissipated. Right? Maybe you get one more
they're not gonna be
generation
there
out of
for
that. But 2-3 generations removed, and they're just going to build those memories somewhere else. And I think people severely discount. I'll go back to the birthday cake castle. They discount the generational component to Disney World that does not exist in Disneyland. And that, again,
Correct.
is people coming back to share with their grandkids the memories they have with their kids.
Yes, yeah, and I really appreciate that you're able to, you know, it's just like I feel that you're more of a West Coast centric, but still have enormous affinity for Disney World, because that's something that's sorely lacking, and I don't think that people really understand the power of this resort and the history of its enterprise and everything. It's just the one thing that just profoundly grate on me is the whole entire, you know, Walt stood here and Walt was at this bench and everything. I'm just like, well, you see that bench over there? That bench has been replaced twice since Walt died. You see that lamppost over there? Yeah, it might look the same, but Walt was never there. That. But he walked on these streets. I'm like, really? He walked on these streets that were replaced in 1983?
What about Roy? Walt was without Roy. Walt would have not gotten as far as he got. Roy was the businessman, and I think, again, when you talk about Walt, first of all, I was raised on Disney World. I didn't get to go to Disneyland till much later. Okay. So my childhood is Disney World. All right. And by the way, I just have to say this: being a kid, entering property, seeing that all the road signs were purple, just seeing these things that represented the bubble. And thinking it was so huge, and that I would never understand how to drive around this place. And now, after years of living here, you could blindfold me, and I could just get through the property. And I say all that because it is so huge. In fact, I had a buddy in town the other day, and we entered the complex through a road that I never go through. And I think I've only ever been on that road once, if ever. And that's how big it is. It's 40 square miles. There's like a dozen different ways you can enter the complex, some of which are completely back roads, side roads. This man, Walt Disney, acquired almost 40 square miles at the time. Not just acquired them, but acquired them through a series of shell companies, okay, because he had the foresight to remain anonymous. Wound up paying more for the last few parcels of land than he did for everything else combined. All right?
Correct.
Had the foresight to do that. Okay, this is a completely different ball of wax. The Florida Project is a completely different ball of wax than Disneyland. He didn't want to make a sequel. He wanted to build Progress City. So I don't know how the significance of Disney World is lost on people. People always would ask me, what do you like better? You can't compare them. Yes, Disneyland is the original Magic Kingdom. But the Florida Project, what Walt was going to do was so much different than what we got. And we're lucky we got what we got because Roy came out of retirement to get the job done. Okay, but
responsible for killing him. It was partially responsible for killing him.
It did kill him, and he died right afterwards.
Yeah, he died in December after because one of the things, and I think that this is really like it's blatantly transparent what happened, because when they opened the park, and for those who don't know, we both know this, but they opened the park specifically on October 1st because they didn't want a repeat of the horribleness that happened with Disneyland's launch in the middle of summer. So they wanted so October 1st is literally, it was at the time, now we don't do it because Disney is there, but it was at the time the slowest time period for tourism in Florida, period. And they did that so that they could have an adjustment time period. And it actually worked a little bit too well, because for the entirety of October and for some of November, there was no one in the parks. It was a ghost town, and you can tell that Roy and everybody else was super stressed about it. Well, they have the first Thanksgiving, and it's mass chaos, and they don't have enough food, and they have way too many people inside the park, and they can't accommodate everyone. These are great problems to have.
Oh, fantastic problems.
These are amazing problems to have. Problems, but nevertheless, awesome problems. And you can just tell. It's just like, okay, that happens, and then literally like 2 or 3 weeks later, Roy keels over, because basically it's almost like, okay, you can relax now, everything's fine.
So the last part of that I want to just make sure I say is that the Hall of Presidents was Roy's gift to Walt. Yes. And Liberty Square was marketed as the heart of Disney World. Yes, so the fact, and I use this because I've learned this from you, sir, the fact that the Bob Iger Corporation, okay, is going to gut the heart of what Roy built for Walt speaks volumes to how much they care about the founder of the company that they're all pocketing millions off of. And I'm talking about the C-suite.
Correct. Yes, yeah.
And by the way, Jim Henson, the same thing. That deal with Disney killed Jim Henson. I'm watching all this footage. I mean, it killed Jim Henson. Do you know how long, pop quiz, do you know how long it took for Disney to finally acquire the Muppets from the beginning of the deal to the end of the deal?
I don't know specifically, but my guess is because it happened in 2004, I believe, and they were doing stuff ever since like the 80s. So my guess is probably around like 15 plus years.
Yeah, well, of course you know. Yeah, it's 14 years. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
14 years, and then you're just going to throw them out?
Yeah. Yeah. It's and really that speaks to, because that happened at the transition between Michael and Bob, and because it was Michael's acquisition, Iger doesn't want to focus on that. So he goes ahead and he sort of eclipses it with his Pixar thing, which I've went on to more times than I care to think about how that deal was also not necessarily beneficial to the Disney brand. But still, it's just like you can see that the priorities there were profoundly skewed with those things. And you were talking about, like the heart of Disney World and everything. Another thing that I find ironic and tragic about this is that if this actually goes through, one of the reasons why they selected to do Liberty Square at all not the only, but one of, is because they knew in exactly 5 years' time there was going to be the bicentennial of the United States. Well, if this goes through, they will be successful in completely destroying Liberty Square right before we reach the quarter millennium for our country.
Right.
So I'm just like, because you can see how horrendous that would be. And I actually, it's just like, that's the reason why, that's one of the reasons why you get involved with somebody like, the governor, Ron DeSantis and everything. It's just like, I feel like, because one of the things that people will say, even those people who claim to, like care about the company and everything, they will say it's just like, oh, well, it's just like, well, Joshua, that's, that's government interfering with private business here. I'm just saying, like, really? That's that you're going to make that distinction right now about this. So you're telling me that a firm in California that really just wants to stick it to Florida at every single opportunity that they can get, without knowing that they're cutting off their nose to spite their face, that's okay. That's okay in your mind, because that's fair. That's part of the American way. The American way is so that we can have people that are in privileged places that have placed themselves at the top of business hierarchies to completely destroy everything that came before them. You think that that's right?
This sounds really familiar.
Yeah. So. So I don't think that, and I don't think that that's right. And I do think that there are certain, when people use the term nuance, people like to throw that word around. And when I hear that a lot of the time, they're just like, well, this is a nuanced decision and everything. This is a nuanced thing.
This is the opposite of a nuanced decision.
It is, yeah, but they say it as if they're supposed to be, okay, well, they assume that the words nuance and complicated are the same thing, and they're just like, well, this is a nuanced thing, so I'm not going to deal with it because it's complicated. I'm just like, no, you can parse these things out. We can get to the if you take out all of the extraneous variables. If you take all of the extraneous variables on any decision, I'm like, you're going to eventually get down to black and white. Otherwise, we would never do anything in our lives. Period. But it's just like, oh, no, it's all gray. I'm like, well, you can deal with some gray, but eventually you get down to a part where you have to make a decision. And it's just like, well, this is wrong. This is wrong to destroy this. And the thing about that is, it's just like, well, Joshua, you're just doing that because you led the company and everything, and this is a selfish thing. I'm like, no, I'm sincerely concerned about the fate of 70,000 cast members on property. And I'm severely concerned about the probably 200,000 people in Central Florida that are secondarily dependent upon the Disney organization, and I'm concerned about people like my stepdad, who has a pension with the company, and what if it completely collapses and then he has no pension anymore?
Right.
I mean,
to suggest that this is nuanced, there's nothing nuanced about gutting Rivers of America, or for that matter, Muppet Vision 3D. In fact, these are straight binary decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that because Muppet Vision 3D could have stayed, and they could have literally gone over into Animation Courtyard and built Monsters Inc.
Or they can build everything the same way that it is, because it's down the street from there. You don't need to make Monsteropolis. This is part of the whole entire
They're not
aspect.
even building it. I mean, that's the crazy thing. They're not even building Monsteropolis. They're cheaping out.
Yeah, well, yeah, and they're just converting the what's left of the New York area to it. But this is part of the whole entire thing. It's just like the company learned the wrong lessons from Wizarding World of Harry Potter. It's just like the wrong lesson is we do many lands where we have enormous amounts of our acreage inside of our parks that are set aside for one or two attractions, rather than doing something like, the other extreme of that is something like Fantasyland, because Fantasyland has like 10 different IPs in it, and they're all very close together, and they're all like in their own little boxes inside for their different rides. And if you do it that way, I'm not saying that it has to be like that. Like, you could have something like a Haunted Mansion. Haunted Mansion doesn't have a Haunted Mansion land. There's no Pirates Land. In Disneyland, it's just like it's its own little self-contained thing.
But it's not self-contained. I understand what you're saying, and I'm not purposely being combative. It actually all ties into the friggin' river.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So
the river's part of the thematic integrity.
Exactly. Yeah. So and that's one of the things that is always like, profoundly interesting is that, you know, you can make things that are their own individual thing that also click into the remainder of the larger story that you're trying to tell. And that's always much more fascinating to me than it's just like, okay, well, yeah, no, we're going to build a haunted mansion land, and there's going to be there's going to be twice the amount of space that we're going to need for it than other than just the attraction, and you're going to go all the way up to this, and it's just like, no, you don't need to build it up like that. And just like, you can have other things that are integrated. Also, there's the whole entire human element of it. You know, there have been a lot of people that have been speculating about it. It's just like, okay, you want to have a villain's land, you want to go ahead and do this, and everyone goes into these negotiation terms. Like, it's just like, I find it rather curious when people are just like, okay, well, how about we just take out half of the river? Okay, well, they want to put in cars, so let's go ahead and put the cars. I'm like, you're not in the negotiating room on this. You don't have to accept the premise of these things. But let's say that you actually do that, and then you can see people drawing it out and looking at the retention ponds that are right between Fantasyland and the fireworks launching area. Just like, okay, you can do that. I'm like, well, that's true. You can do that, but just because you can draw it doesn't mean that you can walk it. And if you're going to put all these things that are going to be these spread apart and everything, you're discounting the entirety of the reason why the Magic Kingdom is shaped the way that it is, so that you can get to things very easily in a quick amount of time, and you eliminate walking and fatigue for people. But if you have to create these massive dead zone spaces between things like Galaxy's Edge and that sort of thing, where you have to walk so far into a land just to be able to get to the attraction, the thing that you really want to go there for, that's counterproductive, and it's also something that, you know, like, it's also not integrated. You need to integrate everything inside of your theme.
Listen, if you're going to start talking about like hub and spoke design to these people, then you're already talking to the wrong people.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah.
and it's like,
unfortunately,
it's exhausting to me. It's exhausting to me. And what upsets me about the whole thing is, because you just made a comment about, oh, well, you know, look, you don't have to accept the premise. What upsets me about the whole thing is it's traced back to an operational request.
Yes.
Okay. So if your operational request is we don't want to keep servicing the island, you know, we've got concerns with the track on the boat and all these things, okay, fine. Then talk about preservation. Talk about how you can maintain it in a way that works for what is there.
Mm-hmm.
But to accept the notion that you can just rip it out because it's an operational problem and you no longer want to deal with it when it was fine for 50 years, it's a very weak argument. And then you get all the people that'll pile on and go, well, there's nothing goes on the river. It's just a bunch of dead space. You might as well fill it with something. And I'm like, that's just a perspective issue, an age issue, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's mostly an age issue. There's a very distinct demographic of people that are supporting this, and I use supporting in heavy quotations, because these people don't care. They never go to Disney. They never go inside the parks. They never do anything. They're looking to be combative, or they are the audience that is primarily what Universal's Islands of Adventure was created for, because you have people that are basically like 16 years old to 25. They just want to do roller coasters. And I'm just like, by the way, you can't actually have a sustainable park doing that. And you're not going to like this either when you get to the point where you're doing this. And the thing that I find really, you know, like completely absurd about it is just like, oh, we don't want to take care of the river and everything. I'm like, what you've just said on a purely economic forensic level on this is just like, I can't afford the oil change on my Ford Tempo, so I decided to go out and buy a Lamborghini.
Right. That's going to have its own set of issues.
Yeah, exactly. Because as we all know, the super luxury cars, they're always in the shop. So, so it's just like, yeah. So I'm like, yeah, this is a stupid thing. It's just like, oh no, we can't afford to keep the river. I'm like,
but the only problem with that analogy is that it's not a Lamborghini. It's a PT Cruiser, and it's going to get recalled for side impact issues.
Yes,
because they're putting in a 10-year-old stock ride. It is literally, they're like sand buggies.
Yeah.
And they say they're trackless, But guess what? You know what else is trackless? My bicycle. So it's not really trackless. They're just, I mean, I know that it is, and I'm just getting in the technical weeds for a second. But they're essentially just putting in go-karts.
Right, and also it's going to be a little bit more violent. If you can see on the footage and everything, it's going to be a little bit more violent. It's going to have a higher center of gravity than almost everything with it. It's going to be kind of like the Kilimanjaro Safaris, very rough ride on steroids. You're not going to be able to get grandma on it. You're not going to be able to get the little kids on it. And yes, I know that you're going to put in the little kiddie version. Well, that's just what everyone wants to do when they're on a Disney vacation. Doesn't everyone in their when they go on a Disney vacation want to separate themselves from their kids? I mean,
doing
that's
a kiddie version?
Yeah, that's part of that's part of the plan, because they know that they have a height requirement for this go-kart dirt racing, whatever it is. So they're actually creating a tinier little tyke version.
Okay.
That's going to be in the same exact areas, allegedly, if they still go through with this thing.
Now that's inclusion gone wrong.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, because it's just like, oh yeah. So let me get this straight. Walt Disney sits on a bench about 70 plus years ago and wants to have fun with his daughters. So it's in a park that's not going to be completely annoying and childish to him, because Disney World was created for Walt Disney alone. He just allowed us to go inside of it, which is a very sophisticated concept that takes a little bit more time to explain. But still, he does that so that he can have fun with his daughters together. And here we are, 70 plus years later, we're just like, okay, well, no, we're going to create an adult attraction and we're going to create a kids attraction.
It literally, by the way, just because we touched on the Griffith Park carousel for a minute there, do you know what's going on with that? It closed a couple years ago. I was looking at this a few months back, and it's been a minute since I checked. But I know that the fate of the carousel was like undetermined, and I don't know if they were looking for funds. But the last I heard, it's still there, but it's all walled up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't investigated that, unfortunately. So, I don't know what's going on with that. I think that it should be a historical landmark. I mean,
agreed.
It's just, this is where the conception of Disneyland happened. Not to get gross, but basically it's true.
Well, there's the conception of Mickey Mouse Park.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Mickey Mouse Park. Yeah.
Sorry.
So, yeah, it's true. But yeah, and then it snowballs from there.
Not trying to out-nerd the nerd. No offense.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fine. Yeah. In the words of Spock, I have no ego to bruise.
Okay, so wait a second. Wait a second. Talking about bruising. Mm-hmm. How ostentatious is putting Baby Groot on Small World?
It's disgusting, and I'm really, it's one of those very few moments where I was very disappointed with Tokyo for the majority of its existence and everything. Tokyo was basically like, if you want to talk about a pixie duster, I've been a pixie duster for Tokyo for decades, and like Tokyo can literally do no wrong. Well, their version of Phantasmic that they came out with that replaced Bravissimo wasn't so hot. And then I'm not.
Was that
I have some
Believe?
No. Their nighttime spectacular for Tokyo Disney Sea was for a long while it was Bravissimo, which was the world's first nighttime spectacular love story. It was actually the sequel to Reflections of Earth.
Okay.
It's a gorgeous score. It's a very innovative thing. And then they replaced it with a very watered down and extraordinarily weird version of Phantasmic. And then that stayed for about 10 years or so. And I watched the footage of it. I'm like, this is just weird. This is just stupid. But meanwhile, they make up for it because they have Legend of Mythica, which was one of the most impressive daytime spectaculars that has ever been created. Like, it has a cast of literally 200 plus people with it, and it is an amazing score that's written by Alan Silvestri, which is the only time that he ever actually wrote anything for a Disney park. And it's extraordinarily impactful and it's amazing. But then the other misstep that a tiny misstep that they did was, I don't agree with putting Fantasy Springs as a port for Tokyo Disney Sea, it would have made much more sense if because you can keep it in the same exact location and then just have it in the backside of Fantasyland at the Tokyo Disney Park, and I would be kind of okay with it.
You're killing me. You're killing me.
So
Because Tokyo is it's like, I want to talk to you about it, and also now I just want to be there instantly. So back up for a second. Because what is the show you said after Phantasmic with the big band, Alan Silvestri?
Legend of Mythica.
And is that performed on the water, on the harbor?
Yeah, it's performed on the water. It's basically it was an aquacade show. They don't do it anymore. They got rid of it like 5 or 6 years ago. But there's some amazing video of it online that has the full soundtrack with it, with like translations and everything. I eventually wanted to take AI and strip out the dialogue and put in an English version, because it's a beautiful story about how mythical creatures once roamed the land, and then they retreated, and now they're back, and then they celebrate and everything. And it's just they have jet skis and water fountains, and they have people that are live performers at the docks, and then on multiple places inside of the Maricosta Hotel area, and huge fountains and these really gorgeous floats that are there, and just like absolutely, and the score. I mean, like Alan Silvestri was just like, I'm going to completely enthrall you. I mean, like, it's very inspirational. It's great as workout music as well. It's just like, it's like Tapestry of Nations but on steroids and in cardio. And it's just really amazing what they did with that show.
Well, I have to say, I have to just own my own mistakes. I brought up Baby Groot in my mind thinking it was Disneyland, not Tokyo, so I did not expect to go down the Tokyo road. That was my bad.
Oh, okay.
And I'm even more shocked now that I am having this chat with you, because Tokyo in my mind can't really, it's not that they can't do wrong, but they seem to get it right more times than not.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm still a Tokyo stan. I mean, I have like 2 or 3 issues with them. Literally 2 or 3.
Okay. When's the last time you were there?
I've never been there.
Really?
No.
Josh, you got to go.
Well, I worked for Disney for 20 years. I couldn't afford to go.
Guess what? You still can afford to go. It's pretty cheap.
Yeah, well, now it is, especially, I mean, like, the normally when you're talking about, like, a Disney vacation, the big sticker shock is, like, your ticket prices in your hotel. With Tokyo, it's basically your airfare, because Tokyo Disney Sea and their Disneyland park are the most beautiful and elaborate and extraordinarily immaculately maintained ones on the face of the planet.
Yeah.
And they cost around $60 USD.
It's up to like 75, but
yeah, 75. So
yeah,
it's a lot better than the 200 plus for Magic Kingdom now.
But it's not even so. We gotta. This is the problem having you on. I could talk to you for 3 hours. So and none of this is in my notes, because you said a few things there. So number one. Kenzie and I, in a very early episode of the podcast, did a price comparison. It is about the same cost to go to Tokyo as it is to go to Disney World right now for a family of 4. It's a few dollars difference depending on where you're coming from and where you're staying. Okay.
Wow. So
it's pretty affordable. The bigger expense than the airfare, because you can get pretty reasonable airfare, is if you want to stay on property. I don't think you need to stay on property. You can stay at one of their quote-unquote good neighbor hotels or whatever they want to call them.
Yes, yeah.
And you can walk. I've now gone twice. I never thought I'd go once. I have gone twice. The last time I went spontaneously. I was like, I got to get out of here. I'm going to Tokyo.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you. First off, the amount of people that line up in the morning to rope drop that park, and the amount of just respect and the organization and then the efficiency in which they get everybody in is just incredible to see. And then on top of that, there are just folks that are just, particularly in Disney Sea, because of the way this park is designed, they'll just go out onto a pier and sit on a dock and just soak the park in for a couple hours and do nothing. I mean, it is It is just,
I would be one of those people. I've
it's
said
heaven.
for years. I've said for years. I'm just like, if somebody offered me a trip right now to go there, you are not allowed to go onto a single attraction. I would be totally fine with that
Yeah.
because of how exquisitely it's made. When was the last time that you weren't there? What year?
October. This past
Okay,
October.
so yeah, so
I went to
you would have
Fantasy
been.
Springs.
Yeah, okay, cool, awesome. But like one of the things that they have there, we were talking beforehand about the difference between the two Soarin' films. The They have the best version of the Soarin' attraction on the
Oh,
planet,
just
and
the
it's like
pre-show.
10. Yeah, it is literally 100 times better than any of the other versions, just because of the way that they set it up.
Just
And
the
they have this.
pre-show makes it better. The ride itself
Yeah.
is almost identical until the last scene.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. But the setup that they go through
Oh my
with that
god.
whole entire thing with the Museum of Flight, and it's just like I'm like, this really just amps up the experience. I'm getting chills right now just
I already
thinking
have
about
chills.
it.
No, dude, I'm
It's just
geeking out right now.
yeah, yeah. So and I did a whole entire thing on my JLH Omnimedia website. I did a full soundtrack of the entire experience, and I had the actual playlist that looks exactly like the museum registry, and I have like all kinds of like really elaborate stuff that's just below the playlist on there, and of course like that the saying from Jerry Maguire, "You had me at hello."
Yeah.
Well, because I'm such a Disney music dork, I'm like, with that attraction, like you had me when you put 4 tracks on there from Under the Tuscan Sun,
Well,
which is
yep.
one of my favorite films. So I'm just like, oh, okay, I love you. That's okay. That's fine.
And see, for me, it's just like you had me at Tokyo because
Yeah.
I, the second time coming back from Tokyo, even more than the first time at re-entering the Magic Kingdom, it was like going from a steakhouse into a McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I haven't recovered from that. And we're really, really underserved here. And the Oriental Land
Yes.
Company does Disney better than Disney. And it's
you know,
really quite breathtaking to see.
and
But
why that they happen.
I'm sorry?
You know why that is. It's not because Oriental Land Company is so
It's good they got that
angelic.
mob money.
Well, I don't know about that, but they it's because of their 1983 contracts. Because they have to, as the licensing agreement, they are required to follow 1983 Disney standards in eternity, which Disney does not have to hold itself to its own standards, but they have to be held to 1983 Disney standards at all times. And really, one of the things that they did that they're very stringent about, most people have no idea about this. So, Tokyo Disney Sea it's miraculous that they created it, because like you think, okay, Oriental Land Company, amazingly done and everything, they have zero imagination. They needed a second park at that resort. Do you know what their solution that they came up with, that they presented to Imagineering first and Imagineering next? Do you know what that is?
I forget, because I do know, because I've seen the documentaries, but remind me.
They wanted to make a completely identical carbon copy of Tokyo Disneyland, and they wanted to put them back to back.
That's what I thought.
So that if you were looking at either one of the two identical Cinderella castles, and they shot off the fireworks from one location, you'd be able to see it from both ends.
I was going to say that, and I hesitated because it just sounded so absurd.
Yeah, well, I've had people that worked on Tokyo Disney Sea, that are my friends, and they said, yeah, this is what they were going to do with it. Yeah. I'm like, that is insane.
No, it's in the Imagineering documentary.
It is now, yeah. I knew that beforehand, but
I'm saying like as you were quizzing me, like that answer came up in my mind, and then I was like, no, I'm not going to say it out loud because I'm pretty sure that's wrong, because who would do that?
Yeah. But I thought it was like amazing, and the thing about it is that with the Japanese and with the way that the translations are about it, they really have a very good relationship with Imagineering, especially because first of all they trust them that they're going to create something that's going to be amazing. Bob Iger doesn't trust Imagineering because he's completely emasculated them, because of the whole entire franchise only thing. Because the thing that most people don't really realize is that it's not just the fact that they can't come up with their own original content at Imagineering for the stateside or anything that Disney control, the Iger Corporation controls. It's also that when you, like, for example, when they were doing Galaxy's Edge, most of the design work was done by Lucasfilm, and it was only translated by Imagineering. It's just like, okay, well, they're the ones that come up with the concept art. They're the ones that come up with all of the things about what goes where. And then Imagineering was just brought in with, well, we don't know how to do rocks and everything because we're just a motion picture studio at Lucasfilm, and we don't know how to make this sustainable for a theme park. But you do, because they get them involved only when absolutely necessary.
Imagineering has kind of been reduced to oddly like general contractors, you know?
Yes, yeah, and it's just I have a colorful term for it, but I'll save it for
No, please.
well, I don't know because my mother could be listening to this. But
Mom, hit the mute button. Go. She's not listening anymore. I told her.
Yeah. So basically, what Imagineering has been reduced to now is they're just a design bitch for the other studios.
Oh, Joshua.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to put an explicit warning on this podcast now.
Yeah, I often say I like to keep G-rated, but I personally am not G-rated.
I'm being facetious.
Yes,
So a couple things there, because I have to keep talking to you about Tokyo for a second, and then I'm going to say this out loud just so I don't forget. I want to touch on management at the Orlando parks because speaking of giving people pejorative monikers, I should say. You called management politicians, and I want to make sure we get back to that. But What is your issue with Fantasy Springs? Because I had to go see Tokyo Sea pre-expansion because I wanted to know what it looked like before they did that. And the way they did it is it's truly annexed off. And even after I got back from my last trip, because I have every Tokyo, almost every major ride in Tokyo shot in 360 on my YouTube. Mm-hmm. So I went back to Jasmine's Flying Carpets to catch angles of the entrance because I didn't remember how they had it situated on my first trip.
Yeah.
And so like that's how obsessed I am with these things, because I originally thought before I ever visited Disney Sea that the Fantasy Springs expansion would thematically be an issue. And it's not at all. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't even come off like a port. I mean, it's truly like...
Well, that's what I would say is the problem, because I have a couple of issues with it. That first of all, I do think it's extraordinarily well designed, but when you go up to say the entrance area and they have all the characters that are sculpted in rock work, I'm like, that's an impressive artistic installation. I don't get why it's there. Like from a storytelling conceptual basis, and I've read the whole entire backstory about how it was that you have these fantasy springs that have some sort of sentience, and they traveled the world, and they went to these exotic places like Neverland and not Andalasia, but what am I thinking about from Frozen? Arendelle, and all of these other ones, and then they decided to create these springs. Decided to create them on themselves. I'm like, well, that's a really weird psychedelic story. I don't think that I necessarily buy into that, but fine. But still, you look at those things and like again, impressive art installation. I don't understand how they are able to justify this from a story perspective. And also, it is so detached from the rest of the park, and it would make sense if it was because if you look at the actual footprint and you look at it in relationship to the two parks, they could have very easily made that as the backside of Fantasyland for the Disneyland park. And
I actually thought it was going to.
Better.
I actually originally thought it was going to do just that. I thought it was going to join the two parks, so you had the ability to enter through Fantasy Springs.
Yeah, and that would have been great and fine. And also, like you look at the footprint of Tokyo Disney Sea now, and you do have this weird appendage that's way out there on the other side of it, which I have some like mental problems with that. It just like it cues over my like not OCD, but for lack of a better word, the OCD about it. I'm just saying it doesn't seem like it's a cohesive whole as
It's
a
outside
park.
the berm. It's the Galaxy's
Yeah.
Edge Disneyland issue.
Exactly, yeah. So that's the primary issues that I have with that. I'm like, again, it's great looking. I just think that it's connected to the wrong park. Now the reason why it's connected to that park is because they are doing, and really this is just a business decision, which is unfortunately to say it. Whenever you say it's a business decision when you're dealing with these type of things, I'm like, well, then you just told me it's a bad decision that you just happen to be okay with. And the reason why that they did that, and this is, again, like one of like 2 times in its 40 plus year history that they've made a flaw. So I'll let Tokyo have one. Is that they didn't. They knew that they were going to be doing a lot of investment with Tokyo Disneyland, and that was getting a little bit too popular. That was tipping the scales between Disney Sea and Disneyland. So they needed to have something to compensate for it, because remember that they had just completed the Beauty and the Beast ride, that entire area there. They also have, the new Space Mountain that's going to be coming in. So there's a lot of investment that they're doing over at the Disneyland park over there.
Yeah.
And they had basically nothing for Tokyo. So they decided to give Tokyo Disney Springs in order to counterbalance that.
But by the way, it's right, like you said, it's right up on the back of Fantasyland. So they could join them at some point.
Yeah. Maybe they could fix this problem later for me.
I know, but I always thought they were joining them. I always thought that the hotel was the go-between between the parks. So I will say this. I used to, again, I'm a huge theme park nerd. I don't think I need to explain that. So I used to dream about Disney Sea before I ever went. And
Same.
in my dream, it was all ports. Okay. And so it's essentially what you see from the Miracosta looking out at the harbor and then the Venice Canal. But I thought it was much more of that. And actually, if you're being really fair about it, the whole backside behind the Mediterranean harbor is just empty. Everything from Indiana Jones coming all the way back around towards where I get that fantastic chicken sushi roll over by the Nemo show, whatever that's called. I forget, by Aquatopia. But that whole backside is essentially just it's just a big horseshoe of land.
And that's where their expansion plan is. That's where they were supposed to put Arendelle. They were supposed to put in an Arendelle port right between Port Discovery and Lost River Delta.
Was that the original pitch for Springs, or is that
Yes.
earlier?
That was slightly earlier, and then it evolved and grew into the Fantasy Springs. But they were initially, it did start out as it was just going to be Arendelle, and they were going to create another Maelstrom / Frozen clone over there.
Well, let me tell you something. What that Frozen ride is phenomenal. Fantasy Springs
their
is really
version
good.
is very good. Their version is
No.
It's the best one. Yeah,
Very good is an understatement. It is friggin' crazy. It's crazy. I'm not a Frozen person. I've not even seen the whole first movie, okay? I only know the music, and I only know what I know from going to the parks. But when I tell you, that ride didn't end. It just kept going. And I was and obviously I'm shooting the ride through. And I'm like, is it over yet? I don't want to put the phone down, And then on top of that, the Peter Pan ride. I had no idea what it was going to be. And the Peter Pan ride is insane. It is insane. So it makes sense to put that stuff in Springs to counterbalance what's going on in Disneyland not Springs, in Sea, because quite frankly, other than the Mediterranean harbor and the oh my god, help me out, source material. The rides are based off of Jules Verne.
Yeah, Mysterious Island.
Other than those two unique attractions, almost everything else in that park is a rehash of a ride from another park.
And isn't that something?
And yet it's the most amazing theme park.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I get excited over their Soarin', which is called Soaring because they actually have a G on theirs. Soaring, fantastic flight. That I'm like, I get super excited about that I would never do for Epcot. I'm like, yeah, we could go on to do the Epcot thing. I'm just like, oh my god, I would love to do the Tokyo. I'm like, it's the same freaking film. It's just like, no, it's the setup. It's the setup. It's how you get to the part, and it's right there. It's just
everybody rope drops it. The line from Soaring goes all the way up past Magellan's. I mean, it goes all the way up into the volcano.
Wow,
it's insane. Every morning,
Yeah.
And that's with Fantasy Springs, mind you, because of the way they have Fantasy Springs set up, right? But it's just worth noting that if you go over past the Venice Canal and you look at what they've got over there in the whole New York area and everything, I mean, it's all stock, right? It's like the Toy Story rides, Tower. Tower's good, but it's too much to go all the way up there and wait. It's a lot to get through that building. And but yeah,
it is extraordinarily impressive. It is the second best tower in the world, and I have to say that not just because I come from the original one, but just because it's true.
No, but it is true.
They're different, yeah.
It is true. It's presented differently. It's still the same attraction. I will just tell you, if I'm going to that park, just to go back to echo your original point, I don't even need to ride anything. I'm not going to Disney Sea for the rides. And
which is by the way, that's kind of the point. I mean, if you can make a theme park where people just want to go into it to walk around, that is enormously successful, because I think that one of the things that that we're severely losing right now, especially in the States, and I would count Disneyland is just as well as the Magic Kingdom in this, is just like we are completely losing the park element of these theme parks. And the reason why that they are parks to begin with is because they're supposed to be rejuvenating and relaxing experiences. You know, you're not supposed to go out of there and like, yeah, sure, tired at the end of a day, but you're not supposed to be completely exhausted. You're not, that whole entire phrase that started, I think that basically it started around the millennium, maybe a little bit earlier than that, where it's just like, oh my gosh, I need a vacation from my vacation. I'm like, well, then there's a failure there. So you're supposed to get some relaxation. That's what things like the Rivers of America are for. That's what the Liberty Bell is for. That's what Tom Sawyer's Island is for. That's what the Tiki Room is for. That's what the Swiss Family Robinson Treehouse is. All these quote unquote boring attractions. You don't want to. You know what you have when you have a theme park that's nothing but e-tickets, alleged e-tickets, by the way. You get Islands of Adventure, and Islands of Adventure before Wizarding World of Harry Potter failed enormously. They were on the verge of Chapter 11 with the Universal Orlando Resort at every single point until they came up with Wizarding World. That was their one silver bullet, and guess what? They cloned the silver bullet over to where Jaws was, and then that somehow, that rescued part of Universal Orlando, which other people, not just me, say is one of the ugliest parks that has ever been created.
I haven't been to those parks since there was one.
Yeah.
The last time I was there was Nickelodeon.
Yeah, well, and there are people that say it's just like, oh, I love the original park. I'm like, really? Do you really love the original park, or do you love the IPs that were in the original park? Because I love, I love Back to the Future and King Kong and Ghostbusters as IPs, but I'm like, if you brought back that original park today, I'm not sure that you could get away with doing that. That's just a theoretical thing that goes in a different tangents.
But I think of I'm actually gonna switch coasts, but I think of, because I was working for NBC when they bought Universal, so I was there for previews when they got rid of Back to the Future and made it Simpsons. And I remember at the time being shocked that they were getting rid of that. And this is, pre-Twitter and all that, so there wasn't really any, big online uproar. But I can tell you internally, we were shocked that they were going to get rid of this classic movie ride for The Simpsons. And then we went to the previews, and it was the cheapest re-theme that you can imagine. Cheapest re-theme you can imagine. you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because it were like this is the direction we're headed, and then I think they got rid of Terminator and they brought in Minions, you know. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
what are we doing here? And then they ripped down the Gibson and they
Mm-hmm.
built the castle. And I'll never forget going on that ride. And I'm not a Harry Potter person. I got nothing wrong with, I no issues with it. But that ride, I was like, oh my God, they just changed the game. They just changed
Mm-hmm.
the game with that ride. I don't even know what was called, Forbidden Journey.
Yeah, Forbidden Journey. Yeah,
They
with the
changed the
Kuka
game.
arm technology. Yeah.
But I'm like, but you know, they had to go through a series of failures, really. I mean, even the Mummy, when the Mummy ride came out, it was kind of lackluster. And Universal Hollywood was always chasing doing an outdoor coaster. They were always trying to get it done, and they're finally getting it done. And I don't know what sent me off on that tangent about Universal. I digress. But I can say that at some point, for me, Universal is home too. Not necessarily Orlando, but L.A. And I would be devastated if aspects of that place was ripped out. Not so much the rides, more the studio
The
as
tour.
a whole.
The actual studio part. Yeah. It's enormously steeped in history. I think isn't it? I know it might be the only one still in Hollywood. I'm not quite sure because my brain is always like fixated on like classic Hollywood, so I have to adjust to today.
Well, no, it's Universal City. It's its own city. Hollywood's got Paramount, and I don't even know who's left. Paramount.
Yeah, but I mean, but what I'm saying is, isn't it the only true backlot that's left in Los Angeles?
Oh yes, yeah. There's the Warner. I don't know if Warner got rid of the ranch or not, and I know Warner has a tour, and they have a backlot tour at Warner. But yeah, like the scale and the size of the Universal backlot. I mean, it's massive. It's massive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's definitely that's something that's always fascinating and definitely worth protection and everything else with it. I mean, I would definitely say that just like they're Universal, Hollywood, and versus Orlando are definitely worlds apart from each other with that.
Look, there's always going to be somebody that complains. I think what's going to be unfortunate as we move forward is, I mean, it's kind of akin to taking the tour out of Universal, right? I mean, if you said, I got Universal Studios, all right, now forget Orlando, but Hollywood. If you said, yeah, we're getting rid of the tour, we're going to take the essence out of this place, okay? That would be nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to take literally what they're doing is they're taking the essence out of the Magic Kingdom.
Correct.
And while it's not a tour, well, I guess it is a tour. It's a riverboat tour. But while it's not quite the same thing as the tour from that perspective, right? It is very much the essence. And I urge everybody to go back to that promotional video. They literally are like, welcome to Liberty Square, the heart and soul of Disney World.
So what you're talking about, that was on the opening special, and that was said by Glenn Campbell, and it was the introduction to the segment that they were talking about the Hall of Presidents with. Right. And he has a whole music segment on there. And I cannot stand country music. I hate country music. But those songs that Glenn Campbell does and everything, I'm like, okay, you're in a category on all of your own. And I saw like recently there was a YouTube video where this one guy, he's a musician, and he just picks apart in a good way. He picks apart different songs, and he said basically the same thing. It's just like, I really hate country, but this Glenn Campbell song is one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard in my life. And he dissects it, and it was the one that they do on the new show, The Line Man. But yeah, they say that, and they say that it's the heart of it's the heart of Disney World, and he says that on there, and it's definitely true. And my thing about it is too, it's just like I'm like, one thing that like the 20-year-olds don't seem to understand is that when you are standing there for almost an hour at a time in the Pirates of the Caribbean queue, or waiting for Space Mountain, or in the hot sun waiting for Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, and yeah, sure, they're really fun for a good thrill or whatever it is. That riverboat is very attractive in the middle of all that, in the middle of your day. It is a respite that is sorely needed. And same thing with like Tom Sawyer Island or the railroad. And there's different things. I'm just like, look, the problem with it right now is that if you think that it stops with Rivers of America, you're sorely mistaken, because they're going to go for Liberty Square.
But that's the real issue. That's the real issue.
Yeah, and these politicians, they're like that. They have no actual investment in this. They don't care about any of this stuff. They're only caring about climbing the corporate ladder.
So I don't know how we got on the Universal tangent, but just to kind of bring all that back together through the lens of competition, you have Universal struggling to find their way. Right, it's kind of where we're at, and then they introduce the Harry Potter of it all, which there was their own hurdles to get through that because they were reluctant to do that at first, right? And Disney took a swing at it, and Disney didn't get the opportunity. Fine. So then Disney's answer to Harry Potter is Galaxy's Edge, essentially. Actually, I think it was Avatar first, right?
Well, their first Potter Swatter, which was the actual term, was the New Fantasyland, and that was when it was proposed initially. That was a major, like, it looked gorgeous the way that they were going to do it initially, but it was also like, this is totally vapid and stupid, because like, sure, you have that big Be Our Guest restaurant, and then you have the mermaid clone, and then in the center of it, where the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train is now, there was going to be 2 meet and greets. By the way, I have the full blueprint set of this. I know in exquisite detail what it was supposed to be, where they were going to have this whole meet and greet with Cinderella, and they were going to have another one with Aurora, and Cinderella was going to do the entire dress transformation. And this was back when, like, they were really touting up the character meet and greets as attractions, which was disgusting on multiple levels, but still, they were going to put that in, and then they had a management switch over, and I believe it was Jay Rizzullo was in charge when they first started it, and then after that it was Tom Staggs. Tom Staggs, fortunately, had 2 young sons, and he looks at the entire blueprint for this entire New Fantasyland. He's just like, there's nothing here for my boys. There's nothing here for my boys. And as a result of that, they brought out of mothballs the old concept that they were going to do for a Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, and then that came there. Then, when that kind of didn't work as a particular draw, then it was Avatar / Pandora.
Was Storybook Circus part of the Fantasyland expansion?
Yes. Yeah, and it's interesting, too, because one of the most respected Disney historians on the planet has written a massive treatise about it, and I tend to agree with her. I'm like, this is because this was a rehab that was done inexpensively, but exquisitely well-themed to a circus. And the way that they did it, like, this is actually very well done for a budget attraction.
Well, I mean, the opposite side is Dinoland, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is not a good one. But
so okay, we're going back and forth in terms of innovation, right? So now we get Galaxy's Edge, or we get Pandora, then finally after Pandora they get Galaxy's Edge, because it's funny, they start Pandora, they didn't even own Avatar, they wind up owning Star Wars. So their answer is to keep adding, is what I'm getting at, right?
Yes, yeah.
And now their response is to subtract, right? This whole time, and this is why I don't buy into the notion that Epic Universe is going to harm Disney. Because Disney is literally, it's like they're literally shooting themselves in the foot. Like, they're literally ripping away things that people have come to expect. We started off talking about the generational aspects. So instead of adding to compete, they're not just replacing, but they're actually subtracting, right? They're actually taking out things that have value to their guests. So not only are they, because they keep selling everything as an expansion, not only are they taking things out and replacing them with new concepts, Okay. But none of this stuff is a plus, to use a Walt phrase. None of this is going to elevate the parks. And none of it is going to have any impact on whatever happens at Epic Universe.
Correct.
So it's like, is it just an appeasement of the? Is it just something to say to the board and to the shareholders? We're doing something.
Okay, so it's a lot of that, and I just had a conversation last night about this. It was kind of revelatory. Let me see if I can remember all the key points here, because it's like a freaking soap opera, and not a particularly good one.
Most
right
aren't.
I mean, like, this isn't even like telenovela level. This is bad. Bob Iger, first of all, is left mostly in the dark about what's going on with the parks, and he does that basically because of his own apathy. He's not like Michael Eisner or Walt Disney. You know, Walt Disney would wear camouflage. You know, he would wear a straw hat and wear blue jeans and a checkered shirt, and he was there to spy on everybody in his park and everything. And Michael tried multiple times, and sometimes he succeeded, to escape his handlers and find out what was really going on in his parks. His parks meaning like Disney MGM Studios and all these other things. So he would do that. Bob Iger has no interest in ever going inside of a park unless he absolutely has to. He just doesn't care. Or maybe he wants to get adulation, like when he quote unquote returned to the company, even though he never left. So he doesn't really care about this, and he's left mostly in the dark with it. One of the things, this is how much of he's left in the dark with it right now. His favorite resort to stay at is the Yacht and Beach Club resorts. They had just finished their unimagineering, de-theming of that resort shortly before he was to come in for one of his visits. They knew that he was not going to appreciate this, even though they had already done it. This is part of the Gensler infestation of Imagineering. So they lied to him, and they told him that it was under rehab when it was not, and they made him stay at the Grand Floridian instead. So they are purposely concealing him from any of the horrible things that they're doing to the resort. So then you have two other characters here. You have Josh D'Amaro, which I hate when people use his first name, even though it's a first name company, but it really pisses me off when they use his first name in my presence, because it makes me get shocked sometimes, because people will say, Josh sucks. I'm like, what did I do? No, okay, you're talking about D'Amaro. Use the name D'Amaro in front of me. So you have D'Amaro. D'Amaro has no legacy right now. There's nothing that he has done in the parks. There's nothing that he can put his stamp on and everything, and he desperately wants to put his stamp on something. And he really wants it to be Cars for some frickin' reason. He really wants that IP. Then you have the third character in this soap opera, which is Jeff Volley. And Jeff Volley is the president of Walt Disney World. He is Chapek on steroids. He is all about the numbers. He doesn't care about anything that has to do with art or legacy or the art form or whatever it is. He just wants to have more Lightning Lane attractions. He doesn't care one way or the other, and he really hates the Rivers of America. So you have these conflicting things. And by the way, also in the background of this, Disney is very aware. I'm not saying this because I want people to do my bidding, or that I want to, like, hang on to this as much as possible. I've got other things to do in my life. I don't really want to do this campaign, this Save Magic Kingdom campaign at all. I have much better things that I should be doing with my life, other than rescuing this. But the letter writing campaign is working, and they are very nervous about doing this attraction. The Imagineers that are specifically working on this right now are completely unenthused by what is going on. These are the things that I just learned last night. And then, so you have this like really weird thing where it's just like, okay, so Bob Iger doesn't care. Then you have Jeff Volley, who just wants to make money, and then you also have Josh, who just wants to put cars in anywhere, anytime. That's what he wants to put in. By the way, there's a speedway for that, Josh. Just letting you know. Hey, okay, buddy, Mr. Smiley Man. Yeah, there's that there. But so Jeff Volley but ultimately it's Jeff Volley who makes the decision. Most people don't really realize this, and I have been harping on it for years. And when I found out about it, circa 2008, I was aghast when I found out how the actual power structure works at Disney, because most people tend to think about it in a classical Disney sort of way, the kind of thing that they put on to like the Imagineering story or any of the things that happened beforehand. It's just like, okay, well, you have Walt Disney, and you have the CEO, and then you have Imagineering. Imagineering plots out the destiny of all the parks, and they decide where they're going to go because they're core involved with it, and they understand it on a primal level, and then they present it to then they go ahead and they build whatever they want to build, and then at the last moment, or sometimes just as a little bit of feedback, they bring in the local management meaning like the president of Walt Disney World or the vice president of Epcot or whatever it is that is involved with this. And then they say, okay, then we're going to do this. And then they say, great, wonderful, thank you for bringing us this amazing new attraction. And the end, we're done with it. So and then they hand it over. That's not how this works at all anymore. So
No, it's the other way. It's all operational first.
It's all operational first, and broadly, if we can move away from like Rivers of America and the current stuff that they're doing right now, broadly, this was horrific to me, because basically what you're doing is you're saying that the guy who worked his way up from being a popcorn scooper to the actual owner of of the multiplex is the one who gets to decide what films are being made. That's disgusting.
Well, I don't know if that's disgusting if you've worked your way up there.
But
in other words, if you were in the mailroom and now you're the head of the agency,
yeah, fine. But when you're but no, I mean literally, like the person who is running the multiplex in Gary, Indiana, is going to decide what films get made in Hollywood. And screw Martin Scorsese, screw Steven Spielberg, screw all these Christopher Nolan, your little vision for whatever you got or what kind of message that you want to put out into the world. Screw all you. I'm the guy who used to be a popcorn scooper, and now I'm in charge of the multiplex in Gary, Indiana. I'm telling you right now, I want this kind of movie to be made. That's asinine.
In my mind, he could have still been the popcorn scooper. The Gary, Indiana theater component wasn't, you know what I mean? He could have. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I got caught up in the hypothetical. But really, what you're talking about, because it's actually true. So in many ways, the quality of Hollywood has been pulled down exponentially because of user-generated content. So while maybe it's not as direct as your hypothetical, you really do have some guy, in his living room or whatever, kind of dictating quality standards because we're collectively lowering them by the output on the internet, all these short, crappy videos. Mm-hmm. You called the lower management politicians.
Yes.
Because I jumped in there and I was like, I totally knew what you meant, but I want you to expound on it, because what I see is people that are more, using the term careerists, that are more interested in climbing the ladder, much like a politician, than dealing with the problems in front of them. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, oh, I'm the mayor, but I'm not going to worry about the town. I'm going to run for governor now.
Correct. So let me explain to your listeners how this works. You are starting off with a company, with the Walt Disney Company. And you want, let's say that you want to become a manager, because that's what people want to do. They want to go into management, they want to make more money and everything, and that's where the next progression up for. It's just like, instead of how many in your party, row 2, you want to be the guy that's above that. Obviously, that's what everyone wants to do. So there are two ways of doing this. You can either work for the company for 6 months as a college program student, and then you get a phone interview. sometimes 2 phone interviews with 2 or 3 people, and they will put you automatically into management just so long as you're mildly competent. If you're stupid enough to work for the company as a full-time or part-time employee for several years and know the business inside and out in your way, and you're extraordinarily competent and highly qualified for the job, your process is a little bit different. You have to get upwards of 15 to 20 of your local managers to all resoundingly support you. Then you go to a panel interview where another 20 or so people interview you. This is not like the college program where they allow like just 1 or 2 interviews and yeah, sure, okay, you're done, you're fine. No, and then maybe you get to be a manager after that. Now, here's where there's a problem with that. It's extraordinarily difficult to maintain any sort of principles as a human being whatsoever, to go through that process and not have that completely destroyed, to where you are nothing more than a politician. In fact, you're worse than any other politician in a literal sense.
It's almost the same dynamic that they put Iger through the first time. The board put Iger through like an audition, and he actually blew up at the board, and he stormed out, and he goes, I've answered these questions how many times? If you can't make up your decision, then I'm done. And he stormed out.
Yeah, which is probably the only time that I've ever heard of where he actually had a legitimate spine for a particular reason. But that's
true.
But that's what happens at that level, and then that happens exponentially with every single level that you go up to. So when you get to a part where you're a VP of the parks, or you're in a Josh DeMauro capacity, while it might be true on a spiritual level, from a corporate level, you're completely soulless now. And you're completely feckless, and you have no actual standing on it. And here's the thing, even if you're a good guy, you can't have that, because then that would incur friction with other people.
And you would never get there.
And you will never get there. And if you stand up for one thing, it's just like, wait a minute. In my particular attraction or my particular park, we have these maintenance issues, and we need to work on those issues. Well, then you become the squeaky wheel, and you're not really a team player, and you just talk about negative stuff.
Let me tell you something. I lived that. Person. That was my 4 months as a technician, because and I remember the conversations. And the guy that I would talk to, my manager, nice guy. I liked him a lot. I really did. All he wanted to do was climb.
Yeah. Yeah, and the climb is nothing. It's nothing but the climb is all that it is. I'm just like, so it's one of those things. It's just like, I can understand, OJ. Okay, you want to climb so that you get to a certain level of influence, so that then you can make things right or make things better than they are and everything. I'm like, no, it's just about the climb.
No,
it's and I know like, I don't care about anybody else.
I know we could trade stories on this stuff, and it's another day. I go into his office, because Everest was always down, like late openings, I should say, or delayed openings. And I said, I almost said his name. I'm not going to say his name. I said, it's interesting to me that these guys are sitting in the break room all night long playing video games on their cell phone and waiting till the last possible minute to do startups to hand the attraction over to operations. And it doesn't leave any time to deal with any issues. And if they just started the ride 2 hours earlier, they would be able to get through any issues before ever handing it over to operations. And he told me that I was right, and that he had addressed the issue before, but he got too much pushback, so he left it alone.
Yep. That's not untypical. And especially when you're dealing with like maintenance issues and everything, because we had just had, like somebody had noticed that the dripping faucet, thing for the boiler room at Tower, and I had chimed in, and I'm just like, yes, I know the person who's dealing with that, and he is an amazing individual, and he's actually helped me out in a lot of ways that have nothing to do with Tower or anything else. But he is a treasure and a delight. And I would explain to people, I'm just like, well, no, this is how it is, because he works on this stuff. He actually does preventative maintenance. He actually cares very passionately about Tower. He actually probably cares about it just as much, if not more, than I did when I was working there. And I would step on people's toes in order to get the best show quality. And I would be going.
But it shouldn't be news that that's turned on. Number
No.
one. Number
Well,
two,
yeah.
I can only surmise what he had to go through to get it done, because I know what we were dealing with in Animal Kingdom, and there would be times where we would turn on effects that had been off forever, or even just solve something that had been broken, and 2 days later somebody would come in and undo it. So, number one, it shouldn't be news. Number two, I hope the effect lasts, because there's this whole thing there where it's like, whoever that individual is, and we can talk offline about it, he's going to make a lot of enemies for the amount of news that got.
Yeah, well, from what I understand too, because normally I would assume that he was doing this because he really is doing it by himself, but it's also not.
I believe it.
It's not as vigilante as I would have originally assumed, because that's what I had to do to get anything done. From what I understand, there is an amazing engineering overseeing manager for the entire studios right now, and
I'm going to need some names offline.
Yeah, and he or she is very good and very supportive about getting effects up to standards and everything. But my friend, who works at the tower and everything, he said that. But I also know that it's a game of musical chairs where that guy or girl can leave at any particular moment. So that's why I've been working furiously trying to get as many of these projects done as possible, as quickly as possible, before he or she may leave soon. So,
which only means he or she hasn't been there that long.
Most likely, yeah.
No, I'm not trying to trap you.
No, it's true. It's true. Yeah. That's just the nature of this business. For anybody who's listening to it, just like and it's very unfortunate. It's just like Disney Disney unfortunately is a microcosm of the rest of the world. It's just like unfortunately there's not that much difference between working there than working in other locations and other businesses. It's just like you're going to encounter, like, it's just if you're the guy or girl that is the super competent one, you're also the one that is the most hated in the organization.
But it goes right back to what you said about the singular notion of Disney. People look at Disney and they think, oh, it's Disney. They must have a bigger plan. They must have a more thought out plan. No. Nope.
No.
It's a lot of independent decisions and a lot of reactionary decision making. I mean, they're not proactive, they're reactive. I've always said that. But that's most big companies. You can be proactive if you want to. But this particular version of the company, it's not even that they're just reactive, they're destructive.
Correct. Yeah, and here's the thing too about being proactive and reactive, because I would always argue for being proactive about certain situations, and it would just annoy the hell out of me when I'm like, hey, this is a problem, this is going to come, this is going to be bad, this is going to be bad, it's going to be bad. Oh, look, it just came here. What did I tell you? It's going to be bad. Well, the problem with being preventative about it is that they want to make sure that they have the right data first. And they want to make sure it's just like, okay, well, how can I justify doing extra work right now when it's not needed right now? I'm just like, you do it right now because you don't want to need it later.
Right.
And unfortunately, the way that the corporate structure works, not just at Disney, but almost everywhere else, you're not rewarded for being preventative about anything. You're just look, if you respond quickly to a problem that exists right now, good for you. But if you avoid a problem entirely, well, no one cares about that. And that's the thing, like with this whole entire, that leads me to think about like this whole entire Save Magic Kingdom campaign, hashtag Save Magic Kingdom campaign, that I'm doing to save rivers and save ostensibly the entire company as a domino effect, is that I imagine that what people are thinking right now, and I've had to go ahead and I've had to coax people. I'm like, look, you're going to get a form letter. This is what's happening behind the scenes. I know exactly what's happening with all of your letters. It is something that can take effect with it. But what victory looks like to us, victory is not what you think it's going to look like. Victory is not going to be a public announcement on the Disney Parks blog that says, hey, we are going in a new direction right now, or just like we have recommitted to. No, it will just disappear.
Mm-hmm.
It will just, no one will talk about this ever again. It will just complete. Look at something like in recent history, and I didn't even like this thing. I was glad that they didn't do it either. Is the Main Street Cinema, that huge building that they were going to build behind Main Street, and they were going to put on Hyperion style shows in there, which was problematic to begin with anyway. But they never said that they weren't not going to do it. They never said that they were going to, we're pushing back or we're moving to this. No, it just disappeared. And that's what this looks like. It's just like if victory in this case is, oh, wait a minute, weren't they supposed to be doing that Rivers problem like a year ago and everybody was up in an uproar? And yeah, what happened to that? I don't know. I guess that they canceled. That's what victory is.
Yeah. Well, because they don't like to be embarrassed. So, all right,
yeah.
let's move into a speed round. We'll wrap this up. Did
Cool.
you catch the SNL 50th?
No.
So you missed Nathan Lane?
Well, I would miss Nathan Lane. I do like him a lot, but I unfortunately didn't see any of that.
Nathan Lane, they did a musical number, and Nathan Lane sang a song, Cocaine and Some Vodka, to the tune of Hakuna Matata.
Oh, my God.
And John Mulaney looks at the camera and goes, Disney's going to love that. And I just thought, now that's a way to embarrass Disney.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to ask your thoughts on that, but you didn't see it. So you would have loved it.
I can say just extemporaneously, it's just like, Comcast has Disney's number. And by Disney, I mean Bob Iger.
Well,
because they love to extort massive amounts of money from him. They know how to do it. They know how to jack up prices on mergers. They know how to extort massive amounts of money from Bob Iger. So,
well, you're touching on the Hulu of it all, which a lot of people will say that they, took Disney over the barrel on that. I personally don't think that Disney needed Hulu. I think they could have let Comcast take Hulu. I never liked Hulu. I was there for the inception of Hulu. And Hulu was originally supposed to be a joint venture between all the studios to counter Netflix. And then it just became a nightmare. I have to say, so many thoughts at once here. But, it's one of those things with Comcast where you said they have their number. Comcast wanted to own Disney.
Yes, they did.
I had to kind of glance over my notes because my head was spinning. Comcast wanted to own Disney, and I was going back when I was doing this editing on this Henson thing, and I was looking at that, and I'm like, God, that was a hostile attempt. And it was only that they did not succeed in the hostile acquisition that they actually went down the road of Harry Potter. I mean, people may forget that Comcast tried to buy Disney.
Yeah. At a low ball offer, even at the time, and this was during the time that Eisner was still in charge, and actually Eisner and Iger were working on it at the same time. I think that somehow or another during that entire interchange, whoever it was that was in charge of Comcast figured out how Iger's brain works, and they decided to extort it at every single level after that.
Well, and they've been trolling them ever since.
Yeah. Well, and really, I find that it's one of those well, the executives deserve it, the Disney company doesn't deserve it, and I don't like the way that half of your existence is just picking on the other person.
But they even did that. I mean, Eisner and Diller used to do that with each other. All that high level CEO browbeating. I mean, you got a lot of products, a lot of projects, a lot of films in the marketplace that are purely a result of ego bashing.
Yeah. I personally find it distasteful, but then again, that's probably the reason why I'm not going to be a CEO anytime soon.
Go read Keys to the Kingdom by Kim Masters, and you see how much ego between these suits actually bled over into the creative.
Exactly. Yeah.
The 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 thing too that's kind of funny is if you think about the Fox acquisition, Comcast came in at the last minute and disrupted that. Do you remember that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, and they jacked it up by like 50% of the cost.
They didn't want it.
Yeah, they didn't. They were just doing it to troll him.
I know.
And he took the bait because here's the thing that I think that just on the most simple analysis here, I think that Comcast knows that Bob Iger. He knows he only has one thing that he's good at, which is mergers and acquisitions. And when I say good at, I mean he just gets them done. It actually doesn't benefit his parent company, like ever. Even when he was at like ABC Capital Cities, because Capital Cities was just a collection of cable networks. So he just wants to make the deal no matter what.
Right.
And they know that. It's just like, okay, well, you can do that, and so let's jack up the whole entire price about buying 20th Century Fox. Let's jack it up to like 50% of the net worth of the entire Walt Disney Company. He'll freak out. He'll do anything. Just watch him.
Yeah.
And then you know what we can do? We can take the profits from him, and we can build our own theme park. So really, Epic Universe is a Disney park.
Well, in more ways than one. Look at all the Imagineers.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly.
What? I'm trying to make this a speed round, even though it's not a speed round.
Yeah, I know. We failed on that first one. Let's try it again.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's just for the fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is a bigger sign of desperation? Luke Skywalker coming to Galaxy's Edge, or the potential that Johnny Depp returns to Pirates?
Oh, damn. This is really hard. So...
We're out of time.
Okay, yeah. So I think that the Luke Skywalker one is...
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's more desperate, but it's definitely more pathetic. So, because I've said, because my like I love to analyze Galaxy's Edge on an academic level. I'm always extremely fascinated with it because it's everything that you should never do with a theme park art and everything else with it. But the one thing that people keep on saying, especially the Star Wars nuts and everyone else, they say is just like, the big problem with it is that there's no, that they didn't put in the original characters. I want to see Luke Skywalker. I want to see Princess Leia. I want to see well, character interactions don't scale. They're not there the entire day, and it isn't going to make up for the environment that you're having to go through. I mean, this is war-torn Somalia with techno parts on it. This is a galactic ghetto, and no one wants to be in a ghetto when they're on vacation because these.
Did you just say galactic ghetto?
Yes.
Okay. I was thinking ahead to my next question, and then
okay, but here's the thing too, and I went through a whole analysis of this on another show with a diehard Star Wars fan, which agreed with me, is that theme parks have to exist in a non-contextual state, which means that if you go into there, you have to know nothing in order to be able to enjoy it. Just because which goes and flies in the face of the whole entire thing, just because you put the Star Wars label on it does not mean that it's going to be good.
It also doesn't mean it's going to be Star Wars. And to be fair, they did capture the essence of Star Wars in Galaxy's Edge, whether you like it or not. And I guarantee I'm a bigger Star Wars nerd than whoever you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. But it is true. And that's the reason why I'm just like, and I always said that Star Tours is the only way that you can adapt this property properly for a theme park application.
You have better immersion in the queue for Star Tours and Hollywood Studios than you do in Galaxy's Edge.
Right. And the thing about that is, too, is just like, like when you think about Star Wars, you're in war-torn areas. Most of the time you're in hostile environments. Sure, they look attractive on screen, but no one really wants to go to Hoth. No one really wants to be on Tatooine in the middle of a freaking desert, and that's what you have to think about. And when I explained this to people online before, they said, "Okay, oh well, Joshua, explain Harry Potter then." I'm like, "Well, Harry Potter really is just 18th century England with a slightly Tim Burton-esque aesthetic to it."
Yeah, no, it's more rooted in reality.
Yeah, it's just like, well, everyone wants to go to 18th century England. That's a fun place to go. I don't care about Harry Potter myself. I'm like, I love being there because of that thing. Same thing with Pandora.
But here's
No
the
one really
thing.
cares about Avatar, but they love Pandora.
Every grown man wants to go to the Mos Eisley Cantina. And the fact
Correct. You can
that
have the canteen.
but they didn't make the Mos Eisley Cantina. They made
No,
a
they did not.
cantina.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
not the same
Yeah.
thing.
No, not the same thing at all. And which is one of the things that, it's so, it infuriates me to no end when they say, it's just like, okay, we want to do everything exactly like the IP, but we also don't want to make it like the IP at all.
So it
every
is really
single
the
time
more
we do
desperate
that-
move, because bringing Luke Skywalker in now after all of the proclamations about timelines and all this stuff, that doesn't matter, because to your point, the average person's not going to know that walking in, or they shouldn't have to. There should not be prerequisites for a theme park land. Okay? So the timeline should have never mattered. You should just be able to go in there and whatever you experience, it's a great time, right? And I look at it now, and you can call me, and maybe this is my next question. Am I a cynical old man because the idea of Luke Skywalker coming to Galaxy's Edge is nothing more than an adult cosplaying as Luke Skywalker, and that I don't see it like other characters?
Well, I don't think I don't think that makes you a cynical man. That just makes you a man.
No, but you know what I mean. But I like when I
Or
see
makes you,
when I
but
see
it
Winnie
makes-
the
it-
Pooh,
it-
it's Winnie the Pooh.
Right, exactly, yeah, and really that's part of the core essence of it is that when you're thinking about these things, I shouldn't have said it made you a man. It just makes you an adult. Because
I'm not sure what makes me a man at this point in the show.
Yeah. But they look at it because when you're doing like a face character, first of all, my brother was in entertainment for like 2 decades. Okay, so I'm very well versed in all of the entertainment stuff, more than I ever need to know or want to know. When I see Donald Duck as a 43-year-old man, I get excited because he's one of my favorite characters. He's not my favorite character. My favorite character is Ludwig von Drake. All my favorite characters are ducks. My top 3 are ducks.
That's fine. Mine are rabbits.
Yeah. So okay, then fine. That's good. So it's Ludwig von Drake, then it's Uncle Scrooge, and then it's Donald, and then after that it's like Figment and somebody else. But still, when I look at Donald, I get super excited still because you're really seeing the essence of the character there. If
Sure.
if you
And
want
it's
to deal with the
consistent.
psychology, it's consistently there. But if I see any face character, it's over. Just like because then they're going to talk to me. And then they're going to talk to me as their avatar. And this goes into a massively deep psychological phenomenon and everything. I'm like, I don't want to talk to an avatar ever. I hate talking to avatars.
But here's the interesting thing, and I agree with everything you're saying. I compartmentalize the princesses because they're not for me. And I have no desire to go interact with the princesses. Whenever you see grown men doing that, it creeps me out.
Yes.
I've been known to be walking through Epcot and go, "Hi, Moana," like I'll do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But because those are for the little ones, I understand it, and
Yes.
so I that's different. But when I see like the Marvel characters, like, oh, we brought Star-Lord out, I'm like, that's not Star-Lord.
Yeah. No. Chris Pratt is Star-Lord.
That's right.
That's the only person who's Star-Lord.
So the princesses aside, and you can say princesses, but we're going to count Tink and Alice and all that.
Yeah.
I just think that's different. But
Well, they're kind of like they are there out of necessity essentially, because you can't do that as like as a completely costumed masked character.
Right.
That would just be weird and that would be stupid. And they do portray those characters really well, and really that is. There are very, very few things in the Disney world where I feel like you can say this. A lot of people say that you can say it a lot of the time, but I think that you can only say it in very sparing times. That is just something that is not for me as an adult man. Now, if you want to, I can still appreciate that you're
it might
being
be
on
for
a
your
float.
daughter one day, though.
Yeah, exactly.
If they're still open.
Yeah, and but I can appreciate if they're up on a stage or if they're on a parade float and everything, and like I get it, I'm there with you, I'm totally with it. Yes, you are Belle. Yes, you are Ariel at this moment. It's just like you're embodying the spirit of it. It's kind of like a Santa Claus type of thing.
Josh,
But the other ones though, when you're talking about like Marvel and you're talking about Star Wars and everything, I'm just like no, these are quintessentially the actors that you're portraying with that. I'm like, I want to see. I don't want to ever see Doctor Strange, a knockoff Doctor Strange. I want to see Benedict Cumberbatch.
So, but then my question to you is, if you are finally giving in, okay, why do you land on Luke? Why not bring Vader? I mean, just take him out of the meet and greet.
Yeah.
Vader walking through Galaxy's Edge would be incredible.
Yeah.
A stormtrooper parade, incredible. Bring it back.
Well, basically anybody who is like a real true headliner, because Luke and Leia were not the true headliners when you're dealing with like the old Star Wars weekends. It's just like I thought that the Star Wars weekends were precious. And I worked at the studio when they were doing them, and I'm like this is cool, this is quaint and everything, you'll have Vader come out, or Leia, or Amidala, and they're dancing to the latest dance phrase at the hyperspace hoopla, and I'm like, I totally buy into that. That was charming, but if you're going to take it seriously and put it inside of the galactic ghetto, and then you're going to have all this real immersion of people, and meanwhile I'm going to see oh yeah, I can see the girl there. Yeah, you're Leia today, but I'm pretty sure that yesterday you were Belle. Yeah,
well, I don't know what you're talking about. Belle's Belle.
Yeah, all right.
I think at this point in the podcast, there's nobody. Anybody who's listening is probably old enough to get it. So, I adore Star Wars. Okay, I adore the Muppets. These are things I grew up on, and when Disney acquired them at the various stages of my life, it made sense to me. It made sense to me because there's no better shepherd of characters and story than the Walt Disney Company. There wasn't.
Correct.
I fear that ended with Eisner. And it's kind of amazing to me that Disney did more with the Muppets and more with Star Wars before they ever owned them on paper. And it's like almost like, well, we don't own them. Let's take advantage of them because it's a zero cost. But now that we own them, we have to, do the math on this and look at the balance sheet. And this isn't worth the expense. And if we're not going to make a return on it, we're not going to do it. It's almost like when they were free, there was no risk. But as soon as they have to justify the expense, they zapped everything out of the creative.
Well, I wonder though, because this brings up this makes me think of something that I call like the Brady Bunch principle, which is, let's say that because you can look at a company like Disney that has all these multiple divisions is kind of like a massive family like the Brady Bunch. So if you continuously bring children into the organization, and let's just assume that they all kind of pull their own weight. They don't at Disney right now. They definitely don't. But let's just say that they do. They pull their own weight with it, and like everyone, they contribute to the entire family. Family meaning Disney. Lucasfilm holds its own weight. Marvel does the same thing, but eventually they get to the parents, which is like Iger and whoever, or just anybody who's the CEO. It doesn't have to be him per se, but just anybody that's there. And what will happen is that, okay, they start talking to the first kid. And he's just like, yeah, sure. Well, I have an interesting thing that I'd like to do and everything, and this is going to cost like $500 million or whatever the number is. And then you have the second kid does basically the same thing. You have the third one. Now, keep in mind that they're all contributing to this. You can afford everything for all 6 kids.
Right.
But if you get to the point where you're getting to the 4th kid or the 5th kid, and they start asking for money with that, well, you already have in the back of your head, it's just like, my God, I've already spent like $2 billion today. And now I've got the 4th kid asking for more money about it. And I said, I can't do it. I can't give you back your own money to spend on your own product because that's just too big for my head to comprehend, and I get exhausted from these decisions.
And the next thing you know, you're playing Sophie's Choice with Bunsen Honeydew and Mike Wazowski.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then you have to do, and that's ridiculous. I mean, you shouldn't be there with that. You should be able to, you. It's impossible for one individual to do this, but really, in an ideal world, you should be able to say, it's just like, okay, yeah, sure, okay. Today I talked to 4 divisions that ended up being $2 billion, and now I've got 2 other divisions to talk with, and I'm pretty sure that I'm going to get to $3 billion, and that's going to be okay with me.
Walton Roy did it.
Yeah.
Frank and Eisner did it. I mean, those two together were. That's the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where is this? Like, where in the company is there any memory of Frank Wells?
Well, there's only one memory of him, and that's they think that the entire company rested on his shoulders solely, and that Eisner just was phoning it in the entire time, and
that's not true.
I know it's absolutely not true. One of the things that to counteract everything that I just said about the Brady Bunch principle, one of the things that I keep on coming back to is this freaking amazing time period basically starts around 1987, and it goes to, I would say, around like 91, 92.
Mm-hmm.
You can stretch it out to 94,
mm-hmm.
but you're looking at okay, Roger Rabbit, Little Mermaid, tons of stuff at Touchstone.
It's the Renaissance era. It really is.
But no, it goes bigger than that.
No, I know, but it's rooted in it really is rooted in Katzenberg. I mean, you really have to give Katzenberg his credit.
Right, but I'm not just talking about the films either, because then you have my thing is as a Disney historian and people and as the guy who has E82 and has annexed the original Disney MGM Studios and everything. You think about 1989. It's just like, okay, you have the studios that came out. You have the Disney MGM Studios came out, very impressive, whatever. But then it's just like, oh no, it's not just that. It's the opening of the Swan and Dolphin resorts. It's also, and the thing that I keep on neglecting is just like it's Typhoon Lagoon and Pleasure Island, both of which were connected in the same exact story. And then you have Wonders of Life that happens, and then you have things that go on in the Magic Kingdom. I mean, just this little time period of like 4 or 5 years, forgetting everything else that came before or after. I'm like, this is an amazing output here.
What year did Wells pass away in all that?
94.
So it says and so you can really chart all that to his death, because Eisner kind of became a bit of a recluse and more of a finance-driven guy at that point, right?
Well, what happened with him is he lost. Wells was more of a protective person for him. So he was really it was in certain aspects it was like the whole entire Walton Roy relationship, where Wells was there really to be the hard nose, the one that's just going to be there. It's just like, okay, I'm here to protect Michael from other people and everything. But when he lost that protection, and he went through his heart surgery and everything else that went through for Michael at the same time, and you had the quote unquote failure of Euro Disney at the time, that really strips away your confidence. Then you have the Disney's America debacle.
Let's not forget the Michael Ovitz deal, $100 million nightmare. I mean, the Michael Ovitz deal's an episode.
Yeah, and I know that, and I know some stuff about the Ovitz thing that most other people don't know through my contacts, and I'm like, my God, that was really, really bad. I mean, he had no clue what organization he was running at. He treated it like, because I believe that he came from Capitol Records. It was his.
No. Ovitz was an agent. Ovitz came from the agency.
Okay, so yeah,
I think it was CAA he came from.
Okay, yeah, but I knew it was something that had to do with music or something. But and the way in which they operate in that world, as opposed to what you do into the just the studio world, let alone the Disney world, was very. He behaved very inappropriately at multiple segments of his very short tenure. And there's a story that takes too long to get into, but the punchline, what it is that once Michael finds out what's going on in a certain situation that I know about, the Imagineer that was dealing with it, he gave over the project, and he said essentially to the guy, it's just like, they had you working on this gag gift. You're one of my most valuable employees, and they had you working on this stupid piece of crap prop. And he said, yeah, he told me to do it, so I did it and everything. And he just said, fine. And then he's walking out of the office, and he kind of looks back at Michael, and Michael just looks at this ridiculous gag gift that Ovitz requested to be designed, and he just looks in disgust. He's just like I can't. That we've got a problem in this company, and the problem is basically Michael Ovitz.
Who is this guy assessing that, or did you not give that name?
I didn't give the name of that one.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I missed that.
I'm trying to give you the essence of the thing without giving you any details.
No, I get that. So funny thing. So Michael Ovitz came from the talent agency world, and one of the things Michael Ovitz was hugely instrumental in was David Letterman's deal moving to CBS. And so when David Letterman has the fallout with the whole Jay Leno, Johnny Carson, NBC of it all, which, by the way, Bill Carter wrote that book just to bring Bill Carter back up.
Okay, yeah, right.
Funny enough. So 2.5 hours in, it all comes around. So Ovitz, he was actually a really brilliant agent. So at the time, it was said that Letterman couldn't go out and pitch people because he was still embroiled in his NBC contract. So Ovitz said, well, we'll just reverse the process and have people come pitch us. So Ovitz was able to get Letterman a deal and circumvent the contract language by flipping the script. So he was he was considered to be, a what's the phrase they use? A boy wonder, right? Mm-hmm. But his move was he would constantly go around town and tell everybody that something really, really big was about to happen in the next 4 to 6 months. There was going to be something really, really disruptive at the studio level. And he would say that with no knowledge of what was going to go on. But because there was always something every few months major going on at the top of the studios in Hollywood, he always looked like a genius. And he traded on that smoke. And Michael Eisner bought it hook, line, and sinker. Brought him in, instant buyer's remorse. You can tell me how long he was there for. I don't even think it was 6 months, was it?
I know it was less than a year. And you know what? I distinctly remember when that deal went through. Sorry to be introspective about this, but when that deal went through, I was, I think, 15, 16 years old. And I was watching CNN as a 15, 16-year-old, by the way, and seeing them doing the press tour and junket for the 25th anniversary of Walt Disney World, and seeing how awkward that they were about it, and then watching the tail end of that on Larry King.
And that would have been the birthday cake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But then the aftermath a year later with Larry King, and because Michael would go on to Larry King. By the way, when have you ever seen Iger go on to any sort of thing where they actually any serious questions for
He was on The View this morning.
Oh, well, yeah.
I just made that up.
Well, he is The View. He is The View. What are you talking? It might as well be called the Iger
Bob
View.
Iger's
the
View.
Iger View. Yeah, it's the thing.
Yeah, because he has no respect for the legacy of Barbara Walters, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they, that's a whole weird thing too. And I've just learned a fair bit about the View lately, but it's fascinating, but it's also ugly. But
there's some. I have a couple stories there. Man, I'm telling you, man, you and I could go on forever. So continue.
Yeah, but in any case, I forgot. I got a complete.
No, you were just being introspective on watching CNN and seeing the Ovitz deal.
So I'm watching the Ovitz deal and everything, and I'm remembering that distinctively and how much of a mistake that was. But it also, it kind of started the spiral for how Michael kind of didn't self-isolate. What I tell people is, it's just like, if you've ever seen the movie All About Eve, which was an Academy Award-winning film, so people should do that. They should put that on their list. This is part of your cinemacation, which is cinema education.
Thank you.
You really should be doing that. So he does. So Iger does an All About Eve style takeover of the company, which is basically, at one point, he isolates Eisner from the rest of the executives and everything. It's just like he starts taking on. It's just like, well, I can handle that. Oh no, I can handle that for you. Oh no, I can handle that. Meanwhile, he go in the I can handle that all the way down. He ends up basically taking over the entire company without Eisner ever knowing about it, because he's isolated him out.
Oh, and they were like head to head. They were butting heads because Eisner kept saying, "You're trying to take my job," and he's like, "No, no, 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 no." But it turns out he was.
Exactly, yeah, and he had no protection. He had no one that was. He had no Frank Wells. He had no. He could never find another working companion that dealt with him. And I think that largely that had to do with the fact that, most people don't really realize. And yes, I know that I'm saying this is an Eisner stand, but still, it's all true. Is that the reason why Eisner was such a great CEO for Disney is because he was a phenomenal movie producer beforehand. Like he had a very long pedigree and extraordinarily successful reign at Paramount.
Well, okay. So first off, studio exec, not a movie producer. Sorry, just got to be a geek about it.
Correct.
But the story goes, because look, a lot of these guys, it's funny, they inherit the previous slate and whatnot.
Yeah.
But Eisner over at Paramount had working with Diller had a really kind of fascinating track record. And I think it was the Star Trek movie where they had no footage, and they were bringing in, I think, Coke and McDonald's to do all this marketing presentation. And the woman at the time who was running marketing, they didn't have any actors, they didn't have anything. So she decided, in all of her infinite wisdom, and I'm not being sarcastic, to beam Klingons onto the stage. And the advertisers went nuts. So I guess without showing any film, because the movie was like almost DOA at that point, she was able to lock up advertising deals. She blew away the room just by bringing the Klingons on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael Eisner walks up to her and goes, "That was amazing. Congratulations. You're now the head of the motion picture division." And she looked at him and she goes, "I don't know anything about making movies." And he looks at her and he goes, "None of us do." And he just walked away, and she got promotion.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
But it was sort of that complete self-awareness that allowed him to thrive, because he knew what he didn't know.
Yeah, and he was enormously inquisitive, and like I have other stories from other people where they're just like, "Oh yeah, he was there on the meeting," and and one of them that was there, and I can say this now because he's dead, unfortunately. George Wilkins, the great theme park composer, he was in a meeting once with him, and they were going through all these complex things about it, this story proposal for a new attraction and everything. And normally with another person, when you're dealing with that much information, you need to be taking notes, or your secretary needs to be taking notes about, oh yeah, while you're going through that, let me go back to this point, let me go back to this point. Michael didn't need anybody. They went through the entire presentation, and he went by like line by line out of that, just out of his own head and his own super recollection. It's just like, oh yeah, well, I have a problem with this, and this one problem needs work right here, and this can go right here. And he just went on and everything. It's just he liked the proposal, but he had certain like questions and issues with certain things.
But he was engaged.
Yes, very engaged and very much, like with it the whole entire way through. And that's what really impressed George about the whole entire thing. George Wilkins, not George Lucas, George Wilkins, about it. It's just like, wow, he was just able to recall everything like very, very precisely right there. And like, yeah, and he read scripts, and he knew how Hollywood was made. I mean, when he said, like everyone hated it when he said it, because they thought that he was being arrogant. But when he said, "I'm the last creative studio executive in Hollywood," that was just a factual statement.
I didn't know he said that because it's so true.
Yeah. Well, there's actual recordings of him. I've heard recordings of his voice. It's just like, I'm the last creative executive in Hollywood. Once I'm gone, there's nothing.
So
there's no one else
he
for
used
that.
to wear a
Gotta
Mickey
be
Mouse tie. He was a big kid.
Yes.
He was. I mean, I know you know all this stuff. He was a big kid, and Frank Wells was sort of like the parent, so that he would rein him in behind closed doors, and Michael could be like a bull in the china shop. But it was sort of that crazy energy that kept Walt's vision going forward. And you lose Wells, and then it kind of opens up the door for the sharks to start to circle, right?
Exactly.
And the first shark was Katzenberg. And for all the good Katzenberg did, he was so desperate to take over that spot that he approached Michael Eisner at Frank Wells's funeral about the job.
Yes, it's true, yeah.
And that was it for Eisner.
So galling.
Can you imagine the hubris? Because he would have had the job. And Bob, and by the way, he would have been the next CEO of the Walt Disney Company.
Yeah, he would have gotten everything that he wanted if he would have just waited for 5 seconds.
Like literally a day, 12 hours.
Yeah.
Like,
And
why
just
would
didn't
you
do anything. And you think that you could do better? I mean, like, I'm sorry, but your little DreamWorks studio is not necessarily nearly as impressive as what you could have had.
DreamWorks was a bailout. DreamWorks was a Geffen bailout, so that made Katzenberg look like he was still a player. He went to Spielberg and Geffen bailed them out. It was SKG, and it was a bomb.
Yes, yeah, and they didn't produce that much stuff. And then
Peacemaker was the first movie. It tanked.
Yeah, so it's just like, okay, yeah, this is not. He was, he was his own worst enemy. Katzenberg was with everything, and and you can look at his entire history before that because he was there when they created like Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid and Lion King and blah 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 blah. But I was just like at the same time, just like, well, I could just chalk that up to you being an opportunist and just like, oh no, I'm setting myself up to be CEO right now.
No, Katzenberg had his hands. He was in the trench when Katzenberg came in. He didn't
was
even
in
understand.
The trench. I'm just saying that it was like there was a certain selfishness to his involvement. On the success of those properties.
I think you're hating on him because he's a Democrat contributor.
No.
Listen,
I have much more substantive things to criticize about.
That's hilarious. I'm just injecting politics into this at the 2 hour and 40-minute mark because we never touched on it. But Katzenberg comes in, no understanding of animation. I think it was The Little Mermaid, and he literally comes in and asks to see the outtakes, and they're like, "What?" And they're like, there's no such thing as outtakes in animation. So this guy has to come in, learn animation. And they hated him when he arrived. And they loved him by the end. Because he was their guide. I mean, he guided that Renaissance era. And he absolutely deserves credit for it. He was in the trenches with them.
Yeah, so one thing that I will say that takes credit on there is just like I do appreciate like the way that his style was for everything. I mean, it could be just like after Frank Wells died, I'm like you could be just having a really 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 bad. You could have had a really bad decision making process at that particular moment, and maybe you freaked out in your head and just like, oh my god, if I don't push for it right now, then somebody else is going to get it. And you could have been irrational, whatever it is. But I do appreciate that. Like the way that he approached it, because everyone hated him when he first came into animation, especially.
No, he worked his way in there. I mean, he put.
Yeah, because he's just like, well, I'm not, and I think it's interesting that he's just like, well, I'm not going anywhere, so we need to figure out how to work together about this, and. If you want to go ahead and curse me out and say whatever I'm doing that's wrong and everything, then that's fine. I'm like, and I will give him credit for that because there's a lot of people in the world, especially now, that would never entertain. Yeah, go ahead and chew me out over anything. I will welcome you to chew me out.
And he became their advocate, though. But that's collaboration.
Yes. Correct. Yes.
So it's kind of fascinating to think about because the death of Frank Wells triggers the creation of the first new studio in Hollywood in decades with DreamWorks. And again, that was all designed just to save face so that Katzenberg didn't look like a complete loser because if he would have kept his mouth shut, he probably would still be the CEO of the Walt Disney Company. I firmly believe that. And I wonder where we would be today. Because
that's a wild timeline. That is a really wild timeline.
But think about it, because he wouldn't get rid of the Muppets. He understood that because he knew that from Eisner.
We might be in a far better position. I would because he had the talent, he had everything else with it and everything, regardless of the political stuff that you were talking about earlier.
I'm just giving you a hard time, you know that.
Oh no, yeah, that's fine. But I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing too. It's just like, okay, because I know that he's been rather nasty in the political department. If we're in this alternate timeline, does he particularly care about that, and is he a little bit more moderate in his views? Because he's the CEO of the Walt Disney Company in this alternate universe. Perhaps he's more centrist.
Or we wind up right back into the same arguments that Chapek got into with DeSantis. Just a different leader. Do you think that a guy like that would actually say, look, this is the way my mind works, and then we can wrap this up. But do you think a guy like that could re-enter with Geffen or somebody's backing and go for another hostile takeover? Or is it too late?
Well, I think that, and again, I'm trying not to do the political thing, but really we have so much of a political climate change right now that I don't think that with his association with people in Washington and everything, I think it makes it extraordinarily difficult for him to come back inside the company, because there's probably going to be another hostile takeover. There's probably going to be an indictment. Not literally, but or maybe literally. We don't know what Doge is going to do, because apparently there's lots of stuff going on with that too, with all the Hollywood studios and everything. That I don't think that I don't think that anybody has a taste for him or his type of leadership to return to the forefront of Hollywood generally.
Well, he's still there. I mean, he's running DreamWorks, but yeah, nobody cares. It's not like the same.
Yeah.
But somebody out there could do a hostile takeover. I guess that's really the question: is it too late for a hostile acquisition?
My fantasy, which has been there for some time now, is because one of the things that I profoundly can't stand is that, and I'm in the minority on this on a lot of my circles. I'm just like, I can't stand that everyone's solution to everything is let Elon take care of it.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
I hate.
I can't stand Elon Musk. I never liked him.
Well, neither can I. But here's the weird thing, though. I think that if we were really to talk about it, which we're not going to do right now, my guess is that we probably hate him for completely opposite reasons. And by hate, I mean it's a strong word, but still.
I don't like him enough to hate him. I just never thought he was an innovator from day one. And I
correct.
I literally had this conversation earlier today. I've never liked the man because he always seemed to just be pretending to be one of the greats, and he's always seemed to be an imposter to me.
Well, okay, so if we're going to get into it, and we wanted to get somewhat political about it,
it's on my list. It's one of my last two things in the speed round.
Yeah,
that's not a speed round.
So here's part of my I'm going to try to keep my grievances against Elon extraordinarily concise. If you're going to talk about it chronologically, first of all, I don't agree. The whole entire thing. Look, what SpaceX is doing right now is completely fine and completely wonderful. It's great. But also, that's the product of the engineers that are there for it. He is not the person who is making those rockets, those super cool ones, land in that way, and with the scissor lift and everything else. That's an entirely different thing. But the primary goal of it, to put life on Mars, that is a suicide mission. And there is nothing in that for humanity. And that is a complete violation of extraordinarily closely held principles for me. That's a violation of the concept of Spaceship Earth, which is not just an attraction at Disney. It's actually a fundamental core concept of human existence, which started with Buckmaster Fuller, which created both the structure and the concept of Spaceship Earth, which are two different things.
Well, I would say to that, if we can't manage the planet that we're currently inhabiting, what do we think we're going to do to Mars?
Right, and also, like I fundamentally disagree with a lot of the things that Neil deGrasse Tyson has been saying lately. But his thing on Bill Maher's show a couple months ago, where he's just like, "Oh yeah, here's the conversation. Okay, can we survive on this planet? No. How much is it going to cost? Several trillion dollars. Okay, so we're going somewhere to do nothing. Then I'm out for that." And also, you look at the radiation poisoning. You look at how it's completely unsustainable, because every single thing that you have that is going to be needed for these cities that the Elon wants to put on there, you're going to need to be able to transport there anyway, which means that you're not really self-sufficient at all, and you never will be.
It's an absurd conversation.
It's an absurd and stupid conversation. It violates the entire reason why we have the space program at all, because most people, because it's a very infantile way of looking at at things, because most people don't really realize is that our point in going to the moon was not for space exploration. Our point to going to the moon was to crush the Soviet Union.
Right. It was,
it was an ideological warfare. It was the greatest pinnacle of it, and it was a beautiful end to that war, because you look at it and we had the two systems. Okay, we are going to do this scientific breakthrough, and we're going to do it. One side is going to do it through communism, and they're going to kill a lot of people and a lot of animals to get there, because human life to them is cheap. And we're not going to do that on this side. We're going to do everything with a capitalistic thing, and let's see who wins on that. And capitalism won, and the West won, and it crippled the spirit and broke the spirit of the Soviet Union. That's what its purpose was. That was the purpose of going to the moon. The purpose was not, okay, we're going to go to the moon, and then we're going to go to Mars and beyond. No, we're not going to do.
Was that your Howard Dean impression?
No.
We're going to go to Mars. Yeah.
So that's one issue that I have with him. The other one that I have with him is that you have Teslas. It has been confirmed by multiple sources, because I'm a 360 degree Epcot guy, which means that I look into technologies and I look into futurism and things to do with like pollution and everything else. Electric cars are actually more harmful for the planet than ICE vehicles or internal combustion engines.
Oh, I thought we were talking about immigration now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can go so many places with that. But yeah, so the internal combustion engine ones are actually a lot cleaner. What you really want to do, though, if you really want to, like hedge your bets on it and make it the most optimal, is that you really want hybrid vehicles, because then you're able to do it. Because also the child labor concerns, the toxicity of having to mine all of these minerals, these very precious minerals that we shouldn't be putting all into batteries. It's just because eventually it's going to get down to a part where it's just like, okay, where do you want to have your power? Do you want to have power in your cell phone, or do you want to have power for your car? Because if you're going to go that route, then you're going to deplete all of our lithium resources, making these stupid car batteries, which cannot be recycled, and also the recharging time that it takes on it, and it's extraordinarily impractical. But meanwhile, he's very concerned. Elon is very concerned about the planet. He's also very concerned about the takeover and proliferation of AI. So what does he do? He comes up with his own AI company, and he's very concerned about how to power the world. So what does he do? He comes up with his own power company, which got merged into Tesla, which was the solar power thing. And solar power is the same thing. It's an unreliable technology, and I've spent enormous amounts of time focused on studying energy policies and how energy and how all of these dynamics work with it. And is an unreliable, that means that you can't actually take it as part of the power grid, so you always have to supplement that with power that's created by other things. And I'm very much a proponent of things like nuclear energy, and they've come up with fifth generation nuclear power, where it basically has no waste, and most people don't even know how nuclear waste is created or what it looks like, and largely that's because of the profoundly false negative propaganda that has been done by The Simpsons. So for years, it's just like, It really does.
You're blaming Montgomery Burns?
Yes, I am blaming Montgomery Burns, or specifically the writers of The Simpsons.
So now you're blaming Conan.
Yeah. So let me ask you something. What do you could you describe what nuclear waste looks like?
Well, it's the rods, and then they let the rods cool, and they bury them in the ground.
Right, but what and how do they? So it's a solid state.
I don't know all I know is that when Homer's done eating his donut, he puts on the helmet, and
exactly. Yeah, and they has a little glowy thing there, but you know they have all those scenes.
And then there's tartar sauce packets at some point.
Yeah. They have like they always depict like nuclear energy as like this glowing, gooey, oozy stuff that goes. I'm like, no, nuclear energy
rods.
is a solid. Yeah, they're rods. They're solid rods, and when you see them inside of those huge barrels, those like 5 foot tall, 2.5 feet thick diameter barrels, people think that it's all rods all the way down. Like, no, it probably has like 1 or 2 rods in there in a paint can. It's a paint can that's completely surrounded by concrete.
No, like they put a rod in a container, basically.
Yeah,
it's like putting a rod in a thermos and burying it.
Yeah, and then that barrel that's in those yellow barrels, typically they're yellow. They're like 2 feet thick around the entire paint can. That is concrete, so it's never oozing out. This is a completely safe environment for this. So all the negative propaganda against nuclear is bad there. So then you talk about that one, and you talk about his stuff with Neuralink. So everything that he says that he's really concerned about, he invests in the exact opposite thing that will lead to the opposite effect for society.
All right, so here's the thing, because what gets me. And these are your people, all right? And I'm saying that in jest. You know that.
Yeah, that's fine.
They go, oh, Elon doesn't need any more money. Elon's not doing it for the money. Elon's not doing it for the money. What? Elon's doing it out of the kindness of his heart. I'm like, do you not know what the villain archetype looks like?
Well, here's the thing, though, and here's the thought experiment with this. So assuming for a second that you think that Elon is a demigod, and a benevolent one at that, I have enormous problems with him owning a communication service, a car service, or basically SpaceX is our entire.
It's NASA.
It is NASA now. SpaceX is NASA now. So I'm like, so you own space, you own our telecommunications because of Starlink, you own the one of our social platforms,
and he's got citizenship in like 3 countries. So where's his allegiance?
Yeah. So then you have so in addition to Starlink, he's also they keep on wanting him to buy TikTok, and I'm like, no,
it won't happen.
Not let him buy. Well, that's good. It won't happen.
TikTok's going to go away.
Yeah, but well, that's good. That would be wonderful. But at the same time, okay, and now he's in charge of Doge, and my thing about that is just like, wait a minute, this is way too much power to coalesce into any individual, and I don't care if it was Walt Disney that would do this, which is I think one of the most trustworthy people that has ever lived in that could do something like this. I'm like, what's going to happen when you die? What's going to happen when you get older? And by the way, with somebody like Elon, he's probably going to go senile. He's probably going to have dementia, because that's how it goes with people that are of his mental faculty, is that eventually that's the part that breaks down first.
So all the drugs.
Yeah, exactly. So you have all.
But aren't you concerned? Aren't you concerned about the conflict of interest that the man's got his hands in all this government stuff, and it's not cutting waste, because you have to take the time to do your due diligence. What he's doing is what he did to Twitter, which is it's the tech bro move of just rip all the servers out of the rack and we'll rebuild. And you can't. I'm all for disrupting the government and cutting waste. He is not the answer.
Right. Well, his methods and everything I've also found are particularly crude. And look, we're not even a month into the Trump presidency right now. And the existence of Doge, and it's already getting like I'm already annoyed with this phase, because it's just like, oh look, we found all the waste here and we found all the waste here, and I'm like, okay, fine, yeah, you're finding it. Where's the follow through? What are you going to do?
And they just say, oh, we saved all this money. They didn't.
And it's just I'm like, so what are we going to do about this? Oh, we don't have anything that's going on. Oh, maybe we just don't know right yet. But still, I'm just saying, like, okay, well, you do that, and then here's my other concern about it, because Elon has ADHD of some form. I'm not diagnosing him, but some form of that. And I'm like, you're going to eventually get bored with finding all this waste. Then what's going to happen?
Oh yeah, he's just going to leave it in shambles.
Because literally he did that with Twitter.
Yeah, I know.
Because Twitter right now, ever since he got on the Trump bandwagon, and even before then, when he put in Linda,
I can't say her last name. I know you're talking about.
Yaccarino, I think is what it is.
All I hear is leftist Linda, as you like to write.
Yes, exactly. As I like to write that, just because I can't spell her last name, so it makes it more lyrical. That, and I'm profoundly addicted to alliteration for some reason. It's compulsive at this point. But so he left it to her, and ever since she came in and everything, the quality hasn't improved. The way that I've discovered how the algorithm works for the For You tab is particularly disgusting. They still do this thing, and I hate this to this day. And this is the reason why Elon is one of my arch enemies right now. He's underneath Iger. Is the whole entire anti-linking policy?
Right.
That so pisses me off, and that actually hurts me financially.
It hurts a lot of people.
It literally hurts me. And the thing that pisses me off more than anything about that, because we all know, just in case people don't know, the reason why the anti-linking came up is because when he took over, a lot of the leftists and some other people as well, they were just like, okay, well, fine, we're going to move over, we're going to go ahead and create our own platforms and everything. So they go over to Substack, and then he blocks the Substack links. And then he decides to crudely block all links. So all links get shadow banned. And there are parts of this code, by the way, where he still hasn't addressed issues where I still think that they're shadow banned, because one time, this is the only time I've ever done this, because I try to stay in my lane, which online was, I'm like, I'm supposed to talk about Disney issues. I'm supposed to talk about, I'm an entertainer, I'm a designer, I'm a person that's supposed to do that kind of thing. But occasionally I'll slip up and I'll do something political. I reposted a post from the New York Post, and which is the first time I've ever done that. And then when I did that because this was during one of the times where my Twitter feed was exploding, and I was getting like 20 something notifications per like hour or whatever it was. It was a lot. I did a repost of that with my own little quip about a particular issue. I didn't get any updates for an hour. And I knew that I was getting, I knew that people were sending stuff to me.
You're talking about content moderation as a whole, and all of these platforms do it, and there's no regulation.
No. And then I thought, I'm like, wait a minute. This is the New York Post. Remember the whole entire Hunter Biden thing? I'm just like, I bet that there is still code in the system that is saying that is shadow banning the New York Post, even though he bought it, even though he took out 80% of the staff, even though they redid some of the code. You're just saying, like, no, you abandoned it and you went on to the next thing.
Yeah,
is what it is.
And I understand that, because that's part of the nature of the individual. But if this was going through a process the right way, then it wouldn't matter where he goes next. I mean, so I know you're disappointed in it, because I look, I know people are always, there's going to be a certain type of individual. I was going to say conservative. There's going to be a certain type of partisan that's going to blindly defend anything that comes out of their side. And I don't even like to use the term side. So I appreciate your candor, because most people are just going to say whatever Elon does is fine because Trump's rubber stamping it. Don't you feel like he's actually the smokescreen for Trump?
What I think is that I am really appreciative that Trump has an ego, and I'm really appreciative that he has this ability with a lot of the people that are on his cabinet and everything, and I'm a staunch supporter of like most of them, and I know their background stories inside and out.
By the way, I am not, but that's okay. I'm just
okay. Well,
putting it out there for the fun of it.
Especially Tulsi. I'm so
Yeah, but you know what?
Obsessed with her.
May I say one thing to you about that? I have one gripe.
Okay.
Okay. You posted this Wonder Woman clip.
Yes.
Shame on you. That should have been Linda Carter Wonder Woman.
But she does look more like Gal Gadot.
I don't care. But then you get into the whole Israel-Palestine thing. There's a whole subcontext there, and I couldn't wrap my head around.
Oh yeah, well that one was not intended. But I always refer to her as real life Wonder Woman, and I love her.
I know, but that should have been Linda Carter.
Yes, I understand.
Thank you.
But but she. And for anybody who knows this and everything, and I've told this all the time, and by the way, I'm referencing two things when I say this, so if you get it, I'm going to be really impressed. My thing about this is that Tulsi Gabbard, her attractiveness is merely a byproduct that I've learned to live with. I'm quoting an attraction, paraphrasing one when I do that. Let's see if anybody figures that out.
No, I mean, it rings a bell, but I also feel like we've had this conversation before, so I don't.
Okay, so it's it's a riff off of L.C. Clinch, the CEO of XS Tech from Alien Encounter. You know, the evil guy when he says that attraction to me, I loved how it was funny to me. It's hysterical. I know it's supposed to be the extraterrestrial encounter. Like, I thought it was extraordinarily funny, and the line that he uses in there is because it's a greedy corporation from an alien planet, and he says, "Oh no, profit is simply a byproduct that we've learned to live with." And so when I talk about her, I'm just like, "Oh yeah, well that's great with that." But anyway, getting back to the cabinet and everything else with him. Trump, like for example, you have RFK, where he is, they are completely on board with everything that he has to do with RFK with health issues, but he keeps him at arm's length with any of the environmental stuff, because on the environmental end, he's crazy. But on the health end, he is he is a supporter of the people. He's a wonderful and decent man. He's got some really crazy policies about that, but he silos them. Trump silos the people because this is what he did when he was on The Apprentice.
I don't know how he's going to do that with Elon.
Yeah, exactly. And there are certain things about Elon's thing, like the one thing that it's just like, this is, if you want some spicy stuff on here, I totally buy into the concept that he is using little X as his human shield.
Well,
because first of all, here's one of the things. They know that there are attempts on his life already right now, which is one of the reasons why he's always carrying them around his head. And he's also a human shield in the second way, because if he has to go inside of any particular meeting with anyone inside of government, they're not going to be as forthcoming or inject as much candor as they could or should, because you're not going to talk to somebody's daddy in front of them.
No, I definitely agree with the fact that he's weaponizing his child.
Yes. Yeah.
What is your thoughts on X telling Trump he's not the president?
I don't know if that's confirmed, but at the same time, I'm just like it wouldn't surprise me, and it's just weird. I'm like, it's so weird. And I said this thing, and this is kind of nasty, but I don't care. Is the whole entire Ashley St. Clair thing, which I've seen her on several podcasts and everything, so I knew it was beforehand. I'm just like. On what I said, first of all, I'm like, I find it really bemusing now that all of a sudden all of my fellow conservatives, quote unquote, my fellow conservatives, are realizing and having a problem with Elon Musk's enormous harem, and they think that that's problematic now. And then he already has 12 children out of wedlock, and this one's going to be the 13th. Also, an alternate take on this, by the time that it's going to be perfect timing for that kid to take over for little X when little X basically ages out of being his human bodyguard. because
Well,
then you'll need another kid because by the time because like little X is probably going to be like 12 years old. Well, it's just like he can't be a
I
bodyguard at
don't
12
think
years
I think
old.
Elon's going to be in jail by then. I really do. I'm not like a big Trump supporter, and the problem I really have in this current climate is that everybody gets vilified, right? And so I don't really care for Trump, and I still would like to see this country succeed. I'm all for the getting rid of the waste. I'm all for that should be transparent. I'm all for solving the health crisis, particularly when it comes to our food. So you want these things. But Donald Trump, who is supposed to be the president of the country, who spent how much time on the campaign trail saying who is running this country, pointing at Biden, is sitting there letting Elon be the de facto commander-in-chief. And whether you could say, well, no, it's only in this particular instance and it's only the Doge of it all and all this, but he is letting Elon, like, literally run the show. And I know he's got an ego. So I got to ask, is it strategic? Like are the Bannons and all that, like, listen, the way we get through Elon is just to let Elon burn out Elon? Or is it just like this guy's bought, paid for, and Trump has no control because it's all China and Russia? Like, I'm not sure which way it is, and I'm not sure which one's worse.
Well, I'm on the other side of this. I mean, I love Trump, and especially all of his children. It's just like I've seen all their podcasts and everything. I'm very well versed in the whole family, and really, like as a person, just as a general person, you don't produce such amazingly high quality children without being a high quality person yourself.
We're still talking about Trump?
And yes.
Which kids are the high quality ones? Other than Ivanka?
Don Jr., Ivanka, Eric.
I'll give you Ivanka and Barron.
Yeah.
I'm not giving you Beavis
Okay.
and Butthead, okay?
All right, fine. Yes, exactly.
All right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's what Gadsad calls an aesthetic injury. But what I think it is, though, with that, is just like it's a weird relationship of it's almost like a marriage of convenience at this moment, and really, it's just like I think that Elon in his mind thinks that he bought his way into the presidency, and I think that as long as he's doing what Trump wants him to do, Trump is going to let him think that way. But the moment that he steps out of line with it, because here's the thing too, and here's a refutation of that. And keep in mind, I have no love for Elon at this point, but when they were on the campaign trail together, and they have had multiple interviews and places where they've been on camera together, and Elon will start going off on, and then we're going to have all electric vehicles, and we're not going to have this, and he's just saying, and he said, well, I don't know about that, Elon. Okay, we're going to have fuel. We're going to have gas in this country. No, it runs on that. I'm sorry, we're just going to have. So they've had actual debates and discussions on there. So I do think that Trump is smart enough to keep Elon in check, just like he's going to keep everyone in check, because that's what he did on The Apprentice.
I think that's more of a Bannon. Honestly, I think that's more a Bannon Stephen Miller than a Trump thing. But continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's fine. That's a potato type of thing to me, and I'm appreciative that he does have a team around him that very much has the Trump doctrine, whatever interest at heart. But I think that it's I think that it'll eventually come to a certain head, but I do think that eventually it will just. I think that your assessment though is right, that the Elon will eventually fizzle out on that, because he's going to get bored and he's just going to want to do something else with it, because you can only find so many hundreds of trillions and hundreds of trillions of dollars of waste in this government before it just becomes boring. And that's an absurd thing for me to say. That really is an absurd thing for me to say.
Because he's not even finding the waste. He's just trying to line his pockets. That's not all this is.
Well,
I'm sorry. He just wants more money and power.
Well, see, here's the thing, though. you're on the right track, but you're using the wrong words. Is that he? And this is what I've seen on, because again, it's just like, I'm a conservative, but I listen to the opposition. It's just like I'm a fan of Jessica Tarloff, which is on the Five, and I defend her all the time to my family because we watched the Five together, and there's plenty of other people, Scott Gallo, for example. Which I love a lot of his thoughts about everything. He has TDS, but that'll be over in like 4 years, and he'll still be a smart man, so it's fine. But the thing that they were talking about on one of their shows, and somebody else was saying, like, this is true. So it's not that he's amassing money. He is amassing information. Is what most people are speculating on that.
Right.
It's not the fact that, like, he doesn't give a shit about your Social Security number or any of that nature. He has it mostly anyway, because remember, he's one of the co-founders of PayPal.
No, I get all that, but the concern then is if obviously money and power and access, it's all wrapped up in a bow. But if he's truly like having backdoor conversations with Xi and with Putin, that's a huge issue. And that's where I'm just not sure, going back to kind of the question I posed, which is sort of, it's like two sides of the same bad coin. But it's like, are they consciously letting Elon be the smokescreen to let him burn himself out so that they can say, we did it, we're done, and anything that people don't like, that was Elon, that wasn't Trump? Like, is Bannon just letting it go? Because Bannon can't stand them. Or is it, no, this is all being run by the two dictators? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it can possibly be both.
Okay, so here's what I think it is, and I think it's very simple about this, is that I'm really hoping you can answer this question with an affirmative. Have you ever seen The Big Bang Theory?
Yes, not all of it, but yes.
Okay, so we know that Sheldon's favorite activity is to organize people's closets on the show.
Okay.
That's like, so they just bring him in, like they're just like, oh my God, it's just like Bernadette's closet or Penny's or whoever's, it's just like, it's a huge mess, and just like, wait, if we invite everybody over here for a party and we really don't want to deal with Sheldon, let's just go ahead and show him your closet for 5 seconds, and you're just like, oh good, I can organize and everything, and then he can stay out of her hair during the party, and he's enjoying himself and we're enjoying ourselves because we don't have to deal with it, and we get a clean closet at the end of the day. I think that this is basically Elon is a clean closet type of thing. It's just like, look, he loves doing this, he loves dealing with the code and everything,
and he's spent enough money, so let him play.
Well, yeah, exactly. He's playing with he's not playing with the government in a malicious way, but he's just literally playing with it. Just like, okay, it's a toy to him right now, and it's not like a toy like a Sid's toy where he's gonna create some sort of Frankenstein's monster, but it is. He's enjoying the playing of the whole entire thing, and the whole entire fascinating story about the elevator with the Iron Mountain thing and the retirement and everything. Like, that's really fascinating stuff, and we've got to fix that problem. But at the same time, it's just like, okay, yeah, he's just doing it there. I don't think that's. I think that's innocuous. I definitely think that there's some room for concern right now, but it seems like to me that the concern is, at this point, it's unwarranted. And keep in mind that I'm saying that as an anti-Elon person.
Oh, no, I get it. And I think that whole Iron Mountain thing was like his dirty jobs moment, So, look, I don't know. I don't know if it can truly... If they're just say, hey, keep him distracted, shiny object, put him in the corner, let him do his thing, that's fine. If that's what it is, not that that's fine, but if that's what it is, that's what it is. I am of the mindset, because he does business with China and Russia, that all of this information he's getting will be handed over to our foreign adversaries.
I don't think that there's any reason to be concerned about that one, because one of the things that he knows about it, and this is kind of a thing, And I'm sorry, it's the other side thing. I'm like, I don't understand the fixation with Russia and China on a leftist perspective, because it doesn't make any sense for one reason, and Elon already knows this and everything, because everyone looks at China as our adversary, which it is, but it's also an adversary with a doomsday clock for itself. Because if you look at the way that their population has collapsed, if you look at the way that their economy is about to collapse, I mean, they're in even beforehand, even if we were talking about the Biden economy, which was horrendous, China was still fundamentally in far worse condition than we are, even under those circumstances. Well, if we're looking at the Trump presidency and we're looking at the second coming of Ronald Reagan, blah 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 blah. I know that you're rolling your eyes on that, but still, if you're looking at it that way, then all we have to do is just survive for five seconds, for just a few more seconds, which we will, and we're going to win over both of those entities. I mean, you're talking about like the entire economy of Russia is, I believe that the comparison I heard is just like the economy of Russia is basically the size of the economy of Florida. And China, for all of its hugeness and everything, that one's going to collapse very quickly, especially since they had their one-child policy, which was disastrous. They're not going to be able to survive much longer with the way that they're doing things with it. And Elon's not going to give them the secrets about that. I mean, he's, again, I don't like him, but I know that he's not going to sell out. He's not going to be a Bob Iger.
Well, see, I don't know how you can say that. And I know we're just theorizing, and we should wrap this up. I have one more question for you, and I'm really afraid to ask it at the end of the show. And you'll know why when I ask it. But you say that, and I think, and I'm just being real with you, man, I think that you're just saying that to save face, because that's what I would say if I was in your position in defense of the person I voted for. Do you know what I'm saying? Because it's easier to say that, and I don't know how you can say everything you just said about Elon Musk and then assess trust him.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, I'm not saying trust him at all.
No, I'm saying you're assigning trust to him.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think that. So I think it's called Occam's razor, isn't it? Don't attribute to malice what you can attribute to incompetence. I think that's what Occam's razor is. Anyway, so. I think that, there are different levels of cause for concern on him for multiple issues, but I just don't think that this one is a particular one. And it's not because I'm trying to save face for it, because I'm a nonconformist, and I only go for, and I know that this sounds really weird, but I only go for truth and accuracy. That's the only thing that I care about. And I don't care where it comes from. And if one of the things that I tell people about this all the time, I am one of the few conservatives on the planet that's for student loan cancellation. I'm one of the few conservatives. I won't say that I'm the only one, but it definitely feels like I'm the only conservative who can attack the UBI situation and look at it just on a mathematical level and realize that UBI will be a certainty in the next 10 years. And I'm a futurist, and I usually have a pretty good track on some of these things. So I don't really. So, and that's a issue that has been left into the leftist column. So is student loan cancellation, both of which I can attack on conservative bounds. So I don't really care. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I voted for Trump. That I feel like it's not a team thing for me. I don't even like sports. I don't play on any team.
Right, but the idea that Elon has the access.
I will concede though that I could be definitely wrong about this.
No, and I hope you're not, right? Like I don't want to be like, oh, see, I told you so, because that's not good. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is, the fact that the guy has the access, the fact that it's all within reach, it's all, none of these theoretics are out of the realm of possibility. The guy's got working relationships with these countries. They are our adversaries. He has his hands on the government and our data. So it's like every single thing that you need in order for our adversaries to get their hands on whatever they want, it's all lined up. It's all right there. So the only thing stopping it now is his moral compass. That's a pretty rough bet.
Yeah, and
from the guy with the harem.
Yeah, and here's two issues with it that I can say that work in your favor with this. One is that, as I already outlined, as a person who's afraid of AI, he creates an AI company. As a person who's afraid of population collapse and everything, he comes up with this anti-human, let's go to Mars shit. It's just he goes all the way through this whole entire thing where it's just like, okay, whatever it is that you're really upset about, Elon, I know that you're going to do the exact opposite. So that's been him historically. So that's one thing that works in your favor.
Yeah.
With this theory.
Yeah.
But the other thing that can work inside of that theory is that you're dealing with, I think it's still under 100 people. It's probably under 50 people that are working directly underneath him. These young upstarts and everything. And I'm not going to be ageist because some of the most bright people that I know are half my age. So I'm not bringing that up.
It's not age, it's approach.
It just is just an age. I'm just saying that as a descriptive term.
I get it.
But the more and more that you do any of this stuff, the more chances there are for something to go wrong.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we agree.
It's like the whole entire thing. This is going to sound so stupid in other circles, but like one of the reasons why Test Track went down so often during its early time period is because they designed the ride system in reverse. So instead of the track controlling the cars, it's the cars that control the track. And there's 36 cars on the road, and the reason why that's so problematic is because there are 36 more opportunities for the traction to go down than there would be if they designed the ride system traditionally. The reason why I bring that up as a very weird example is that the more and more that they add more people to the staff, that they increase the complexity of Doge, and that they get into the weeds on this, the more of a chance there is for some sort of misstep. And let's just be charitable and say that they can slip up on one or two things, just like, okay, yeah, you shouldn't have touched that.
So, by the way, what
right
you just said about Test Track, that the vehicles move, that there's no track, there's no ride.
No, I mean that their computer systems for the computer systems which are on each car. They basically function like a democracy rather than dictatorship, which if you're going for it, again, forget the actual politics of it and everything. If you have a ride system, it needs to be dictatorship all the way.
That's what the track is.
The track itself controls the actual cars.
Well, what I'm saying is you just described the new Cars ride because it's going to function essentially the same way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which
so
just
that's good. That'll be insane.
But how many reasons? How many opportunities for it to break down? Because each one of those vehicles is going to function, even though it's going to be a different system. Your point is the same with that attraction.
Yeah, because they're doing it under democracy, and then that means that if all 36 of the cars at Test Track aren't perfectly in sync with each other the entire way through, it's going to screw up.
Wouldn't that be communism, not democracy? Because the cars all have to move together equally to keep a distance. It would be communism, not democracy.
Well, they still have to agree with each other. Well, I guess, you can go either way with that.
All right, last question, because that's ridiculous.
It's probably a bad one, yes.
I'm afraid do you want me to ask you this last question?
Well, I think your fear is that I'll go off on a 45-minute diatribe. Is that the fear?
It's not the fear. It's that I might go on a 45-minute diatribe.
Okay.
So try to answer this with a simple yes or no.
I'm not in a congressional hearing. I don't have to do that.
Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Song of the South, racist, yes or no?
No.
No, I agree. Joshua Harris, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it. This is fun.
Thank you, sir.